Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto meets Gaara at a young age. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Ice Blood and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1 Prologue Briefing. The young man stood nervously in the old man's office, sporadically clenching and unclenching his fists. Taking a deep breath, he glanced at the old man and cleared his throat. Hokage-sama, are you sure about this? They're just children. They haven't learned anything yet. There are a few exceptions for those who are part of an established clan, but they still haven't had any formal training. What if something happens? The old man sighed as he placed a pinch of tobacco slowly and methodically into a long, thin pipe. Iruka, you're acting as though I am planning to put them into the midst of a war zone. The Sand are our allies, and even if something were to happen, I'm making certain we'll have adequate protection for them. The man called Iruka sighed heavily. I don't know, the Sand's village is run differently than ours. I've been there several times. The people are much less well. I don't really know how to say it, but I know what you mean, Iruka, but that is part of the reason I wish for your new class to go there. It would do them well to see another shinobi village, the Sands especially, since it is so vastly different from our own. They need to understand such things. I suppose I'm just overreacting. The old man smiled slightly. You care about your students. That is admirable, and a quality much sought in instructors. It was part of the reason you received the position at such a young age as you did. However, do not allow yourself to be so worried for them that you end up harming yourself. Try to calm down, Iruka. If you are tense, you are likely to make mistakes, ones you will regret later. Have faith in yourself and your fellows. The students will not come to harm. Iruka forced himself to pull up a chair and sit down. As he began twiddling his thumbs, he snapped his arms down to his sides. So Hokage-sama, you said there were two reasons you want my new students to visit the Sands village. One, I take it, is for the learning experience. What is the other? The old man struck fire to the pipe, took a deep draw from it, and stood up, beginning to pace behind his desk. Well, Iruka, I not tell you this, but given your personal connection to young Naruto, I'm certain you will want to know, and I believe you deserve to. Naruto? Iruka asked, suddenly paying much more attention. What's this have to do with Naruto? This information is confidential, Iruka. I expect you to treat it gravely. Tell no one. The second reason I wish for your students to go with you to the Sand is due to Naruto. Iruka licked his lips nervously. The Kazekage has had a second son in the past few years. He has not disclosed this information to any but me, and only me because I am an ally. He is 9 years old, the same age as Naruto, give or take a few months. Really? Iruka asked, sitting straighter. A second son? He'd had no idea. He knew of two of the Kazekage's children, Kankuro and Temari, both promising future shinobi, but a third? Yes. His name is Sabaka no Gaara. Gaara of the desert. Iruka raised an eyebrow. Sabaka no Gaara? He repeated. Yes. More importantly, however, is that at his birth, the Shikaka was sealed within him. As such, he is an immensely powerful child already. The Shikaka, the single-tailed raccoon demon. Iruka had heard the stories based around it. Nearly every shinobi knew the stories of the 9 Bijou, and while the Shikaka was thought to be one of the weakest of them, it was also reported to be the most insane. Sabaka no Gaara is a Jinchuriki, Iruka murmured softly, realization dawning on his face. Just like Naruto. Precisely, the old man said with a nod. From what I have heard from Kazekage's reports, young Gaara has become extremely unstable. He faces the same disdain as our Naruto does. Everyone in the Sand knows he holds the Shikaka within him. But all Gaara knows in regard to why is that he has strange power. I believe that, based on this, it would be good for both Gaara and Naruto to meet each other. Though neither know they are a Jinchuriki, they nonetheless will understand each other. Iruka, too, understood now. He nodded, now fully in agreement with the plan. I get it now, he said. You're right. It will be good for Naruto to meet another like him. They will likely get along well, and when and if Naruto discovers that he holds the Kyuubi within him, he will have someone who understands. Yes, the old man agreed. So you agree that this plan should continue? Yes, Iruka said. I understand completely now. Good. Iruka stood, bowed deeply. Thank you for discussing this with me, Hokage-sama. Of course. You are dismissed, Iruka. If you would, inform your students of the trip to the Sands village tomorrow. We cannot force them to go, of course, but if you would make certain Naruto wishes to. Otherwise, it will be of little value. So Naruto is the main reason for this? Yes. I understand. Trust me, he's never been outside our village. He'll want to go. I'll tell them tomorrow and I'll make sure to get them excited about it. Better that they consider it a treat rather than an assignment. They will be easier to deal with. The old man nodded. Indeed. With a final nod, Irika turned and left the room, leaving the old man alone. Hopefully I won't end up regretting this, he murmured as he sat down at his desk again. This will either be a successful attempt at strengthening our alliance, or a disaster. It all depends on how Gaara reacts upon meeting Naruto. Let them befriend each other. A ring of smoke rose from the old man's pipe, floated above him for a second or two before vanishing into the air. He had calmed Irika, but he had done nothing to settle his own nerves. If this didn't work the way he hoped, it could ruin everything. 1745. Chapter 2, 1 Learning Experiences. No longer alone. Part I. The beginning. There it is. That building right there. What's that? Glancing up from his sandaled feet, Naruto Shikamaru followed the pointing finger of his classmate, blonde-haired Uzumaki Naruto, and was face to face with a huge, obviously expensive compound. The elegantly sloping roofs and awnings looked like the waves of a paneled, clay ocean in the air. The white walls gleamed as if made of fine marble in the bright sunlight. That? Shikamaru muttered, raising a thin black eyebrow over one black eye. You had me skip class so you could ask me about a building? Why didn't you just ask one of the other villagers? Ask a neighbor or something. Why drag me such a long distance for such a troublesome question? Naruto pouted, crossing his arms over the spiral design on his black t-shirt. 'Cause all the villagers re stupid. I asked them. I asked a whole bunch of them. None of them wanted to tell me. So I figured, since you're so smart, you might know. Is it a secret or something? How come nobody'll tell me? It's no secret, Shikamaru said. That's the home of the Hyuga clan, one of the oldest families in Konoha. Naruto's eyebrows rose as he looked back at the compound. Hyuga? Sounds kinda familiar. Who are they? The Hyuga clan was one of the founding families of this village. The first members of the clan were a band of very successful mercenaries. It was partly because of their vast wealth that the first hokage was able to establish the village. Naruto frowned thoughtfully. Yeah? Rich guys, huh? Yes. So what made these mercenaries so special? I heard of mercenaries before. None of the ones I ever heard of had enough money to make a whole village. The Hyuga retain a highly advanced bloodline limit, called the Byakugan. Bloodline limit? Naruto echoed. What's that? Shikamaru rolled his eyes. Don't you ever pay attention in class? Irika-sensei has gone over bloodline limits several times. It was on last week's test. I failed that thing. What are bloodline limits? Shikamaru sighed. You asked such troublesome questions. A bloodline limit is a special ability passed down by blood. No one knows how they started, but once one is established, every member of that family will have that same bloodline limit. It's an abnormality in the family's DNA. I haven't studied them much, but that's enough for you to get it. So the Hyuga clan's full of freaks. Don't treat them lightly, Naruto, Shikamaru warned. The Hyuga clan is not only one of the richest clans in Konoha, it's also one of the strongest. Some of our best shinobi have come from that compound. The Byakugan. Byakuwa? Byakugan, Shikamaru snapped. The Byakugan is a dijitsu. A what? A dijitsu, a shinobi technique using the eye, Shikamaru said sharply, glaring at his classmate. Kami-sama, you don't know anything about shinobi, do you? That stuff's boring. Then why are you asking me about it? I dunno. Anyways, what about this Byaku thing? Sighing again, Shikamaru sighed often, especially around Naruto. The young genius continued. The Byakugan is a dijitsu that allows the shinobi an almost 360-degree field of vision and also, from what I've read, allows him to also see the chakra circulatory system of his opponent. Chakra, that's the energy a ninja uses when he does ninjutsu, right? Yes. And this circular Watsit system is? It's like the bloodstream, except instead of pumping blood, it pumps chakra. Oh. Anyway, this ability is why the Hyuga clan has its own style of taijutsu. Hand-to-hand combat, right? Yes, you do pay attention to some things, I guess. Anyway, the Hyuga clan's taijutsu style is called Juken. Instead of focusing on breaking bones and damaging muscles, like the sort of taijutsu most Konoha shinobi use, Juken is designed to damage the chakra circulatory system, thereby crippling an enemy shinobi's ability to mold chakra, thus stopping them from using techniques. Without being able to use ninjutsu or genjutsu, that's illusionary techniques, most any enemy will fall rather quickly. Wow, so these guys are super strong, huh? Yes. And they all live in there? The whole family? Yes, at least, as far as I know. How many people are in the clan? I'm not sure. Naruto was studying the Hyuga compound with intense curiosity, arms still crossed over his chest. Is anybody from this clan in our class? One, Shikamaru said. Hyuga Hinata. You know her, she's the small, shy girl who always sits in the back. She has gray eyes with no pupils, or at least, you can't see them. That's the mark of a person with the Byakugan bloodline limit. Oh yeah, I think I know who you're talking about. I seen her sometimes when we're out doing physical training. She don't seem so strong. Maybe not yet, but neither are any of us. Well, there are rumors going around that Uchiha Sasuke can perform a fire jutsu, but I don't know that for sure. We just started at the academy, Naruto. It's only been a few weeks. Nobody's strong yet. Sasuke? Naruto asked. I think I know that guy. Ain't he the one who all the girls are talking to all the time? I guess. I don't really pay attention to that sort of thing, it's just troublesome. He knows ninjutsu already? I wonder if he'd teach me how to do it. I doubt it, and I don't even know if he really can. It's just a rumor. Maybe I'll ask him about it. Whatever, Shikamaru said with a shrug. Can we leave now? My feet hurt. Yeah, sure, thanks, Shikamaru. Uh-huh. There you two are. Naruto jumped half a foot in the air and whirled to face the glaring, narrow eyes of his teacher. Iruka stood, arms crossed with a deep scowl on his lips. Shikamaru sighed and lowered his head, muttering about how troublesome this was. Hey, Iruka-sensei, Naruto mumbled, a nervous grin on his face. How you doin'? Don't play cute with me. Iruka snarled, gripping Naruto and Shikamaru by their arms and dragging them off toward the Konoha Shinobi Academy. You two have skipped my class 9 times in the past 3 weeks. How do you intend to become ninja if you don't learn? I already know it, Shikamaru muttered. My dad made me study all that stuff in our library before I came to the academy. It's boring and troublesome. It's also impossible to become a real ninja without graduating from the academy. Naruto, you always tell me how you'll become the best ninja Konoha has ever seen. How do you intend to do that if you never become a ninja? I'll be a ninja my own way. Naruto snapped. Your lectures are boring, Iruka-sensei. Why don't you make them interesting? I was praised for how well I give lectures that interest the audience, Iruka shot back, so just feel lucky you have me or they'd be even more boring. Keep up. If you fall behind, it's your loss. I have a big announcement to make today, and if you miss it, you'll lose a big opportunity. Naruto sighed, thoroughly bored. Probably one of those boring extra credit announcements. You could use some of that. Iruka growled. As he approached the academy, he let the two boys go and threw open the bright red double doors and stalked inside. Get in here. Naruto and Shikamaru shuffled inside and took their seats, leaning on their desks as Iruka took his place in front of them. Heaving a sigh, Iruka wiped his hands on his pants and then crossed his arms over his chest. All right, now that we're all here, he glared pointedly at Naruto and Shikamaru again, I can announce today's at-home assignment. The gathered students on cue groaned. Several whined about having too much homework, about how Iruka was a slave driver and how they never got a break. Others protested that they had too many chores to do at home and didn't have the time for homework. One boy even claimed to have recently been diagnosed with a severe allergy to paper. Iruka waited until all was silent again before speaking. Is everyone finished now? I'm going to assign this regardless of anything you come up with. The students grumbled and nodded, as if they were a single, ill-tempered body with 20 heads. Good. Now, Hokage-sama recently announced his scheduled meeting with the Kazekage, from the village hidden in the sand. I have been chosen as one of his escorts, therefore I will not be teaching this class during the time of his meeting. Gasps of delight and half-whispered cheers sounded throughout the room. Iruka took a deep breath and studied the fingernails of his right hand until the room quieted down. Hokage-sama is leaving in a week from tomorrow. However, he has decided to do something else this year. Every year Hokage-sama meets with the Kazekage, but he usually only selects a small group of Chunin and Jounin to accompany him. This year, he will do something different. Slight interest passed the students' faces. Hokage-sama has decided that it would be beneficial to this year's academy students to visit another village. As a learning experience, you see. So, he has doubled the number of Chunin and Jounin traveling this year, and wishes to know how many of you wish to go as well, to spend a small vacation, I suppose you'd say, at the village hidden in the sand. Will we have to take notes or something? One boy asked irritably. Yeah, another boy said, is there gonna be a test on sand stuff when we get back? No, Iruka said, smiling slightly. This is not required. Those of you who wish to stay here may do so. However, I highly recommend that you all take Hokage-sama up on his offer. I know many of you have never been outside our village of Konoha, and to see another shinobi village will be an important experience, a way to prepare you for when you become true ninja. After all, not all missions take place within this village, very few do, actually. This won't be a time to work. I'm not going to make you take notes, or conduct interviews or anything like that. You'll just go with us, see the sights, meet new people, understand a different culture, all that. Now I can see many of you are probably planning to pass. If it's not required, why do it? Right. Well, go ahead and stay here if you wish, but this has never happened before. You all should be honored that Hokage-sama has deemed you mature enough to handle such a journey. He will likely look favorably on you all for it, and it may give you an edge when the time comes for you to graduate. As Iruka had figured, Naruto was now at attention. His eyes gleamed, his fists clenched. Iruka smiled. He wasn't sure at all if such a journey would give them an edge, as knowledge of other villages was not considered nearly as much as strength, intelligence, stamina, and teamwork were when considering candidates, but just by suggesting it, he had all but assured Naruto's willingness to participate. Any chance at impressing his superiors, Naruto took. Uzumaki Naruto was a strange person. Though he was perfectly willing to perform any physical feat in order to further his own ability, he was nearly incapable of sitting still and working his mind. He often claimed he wished to become the best ninja ever and that he would do anything it took to do so, but he also barely ever paid attention in class. Iruka had the feeling that Naruto, like so many other young people, had made the false assumption that being a ninja meant being physically strong, and that was all that mattered. This was the first time Iruka had had Naruto's complete attention in over a week. The blonde-haired boy was practically standing. He was excited, as Iruka had figured he would be. To go outside of the village, to go on a journey with the Hokage himself, to visit a place he had only ever heard of in lectures, it had Naruto completely enthralled. Iruka smiled. Quite a few of the others had the same excitement on their faces. He had a feeling that hardly any of his 20 students would be staying home now that they realized they were special. Okay, now for your assignment, I want you to speak to your families about this journey and get their permission to go if you want to go, that is. Naruto, Sasuke, you obviously are exempt from this. If you wish to go, you may go. Both boys nodded. All right then. Class is dismissed. Naruto, Shikamaru, I'd like to have a word with you both. Naruto's excitement was gone in an instant, replaced by complete disappointment. He stared at the floor as he dragged himself forward, hands stuffed into the pockets of his orange pants. Shikamaru had that same bored expression he always had. Now Iruka began once the other students had left. Which one of you would like to explain to me why you skipped my class today? He tapped his foot as he waited for an answer, mostly for effect. Well, you see, Iruka-sensei, Naruto stammered, searching for the right words to explain, that is well, see, there's this big old building on the other side of the village, and I wanted to know who lived there. It's a big place, you know, and so I figured they must be real rich or something, but when I asked people, nobody would answer me. They'd just go away. I thought maybe it was some secret or something, and since Shikamaru knows a lot of stuff, I thought he might know. So I asked him. And you couldn't have waited until after class to ask? But I really wanted to know. And besides, everybody always goes home right after class. Nobody ever hangs around. They all got families to go to and stuff. Iruka found he wasn't angry anymore, not even irritated. Naruto had simply wanted the answer to a question, one nobody would provide him. So he had asked one of his classmates during the only time he could, during class. Because Naruto was right. The other students never stayed around after school was dismissed. They had families, friends. Naruto was an outcast. He only knew Naruto Shikamaru casually, and Iruka had a thought that the only reason the young genius had consented to answer Naruto's questions was because it presented an opportunity to skip class. Iruka sighed. Fine, I guess it isn't too big of a deal. And did you learn anything from Shikamaru? Oh, sure, Naruto said. He talked about bloodline limits, and Dijitsu, and in chakra and stuff. Where did you go? Shikamaru finally spoke up. The Hyuga clan's compound. Naruto wanted to know why they were so wealthy, so I told him about the Byakugan. Iruka murmured, rubbing his chin. Well, that's a start, I guess. I suppose I won't punish you, since you did learn something, but start coming to class more often, would you? You won't become a ninja if you don't learn the basics, Naruto. And Shikamaru, you may know the topics I talk about already, but that doesn't mean you don't have to graduate. Shikamaru nodded. Fine, can I go now? My dad said he wanted to meet with me after class today. Fine. Shikamaru left the room. So, Naruto, Iruka said, and Naruto looked up at him, raising an eyebrow. Do you remember all that Shikamaru told you? Well, he said that the first guys in the Hyuga clan were mercenaries, and that's how they got all their money, and he said the Baiku whatever was a special dijitsu that lets you see your enemies, a chakra circular system. Circulatory, Iruka corrected. Yeah, that's it, and he said the Hyuga clans got this special taijutsu, the Juken. Yeah. And it focuses on damaging that chakra thing so your enemy can't use jutsu, and that makes him easy to beat. Iruka was impressed, and he didn't bother to hide it. Well, it seems that you had a productive day despite going truant. At least it wasn't wasted time. What do you say we go over to Ichiraku and I buy us some lunch, huh? Huh? Naruto exclaimed, eyes widening. Seriously? Sure. Awesome. Let's go now. Iruka chuckled as Naruto shot out the door, singing a song about ramen to himself. The boy was a ball full of energy. It made for some very surprising situations. One minute he's walking so slow you'd think he twisted his ankle, the next he's bouncing off the walls. You sure keep me on my toes, Naruto, always on my toes. He laughed silently to himself as he followed his undedicated but highly spirited, it seemed like an oxymoron, but somehow Naruto pulled it off, student to the restaurant. I should have offered to make him something, Iruka muttered as he heard Naruto rattle off the various things he wanted to eat. One of these days all the sodium in that ramen is going to kill him, and it would have been cheaper, too. Somehow, Iruka knew he'd end up with no money by the end of the day. There are various theories being studied in regard to the origin of bloodline limit techniques, but as of the writing of this text none have been proven. The first reported bloodline limit technique was within a member of the Aimshai clan, from the shinobi village hidden in the vines, destroyed as of the mid-17th century, in the early 16th century. Records of the specifics of this technique are believed to have been destroyed during the Sanaji-Unizaki War, which began in 1603 and ended in 1614. The Aimshai clan rose to its peak in 1654, most likely due to their bloodline limit. The village hidden in the vines was ruled by the Aimshai for over 2 decades, and in 1683 was overthrown after the Ainishur rebellion. Geez. Eh? Shikamaru raised an eyebrow at Naruto, who was leaning over a thick, leather-bound book he held in his lap. What's that? Naruto looked up. Some book Iruka-sensei gave me. He wants me to write a report on bloodline limits to make up for all the work I've missed. This stuff is so boring and there's so many names and dates and other junk that nobody cares about anymore. How's he expect me to pay attention to this? Shikamaru smirked. I don't know. Naruto groaned, shut the book and tossed it aside, leaning back against the trunk of the tree he sat under. As he stared up at the clear sky, his mind wandered. He thought about the trip he would be taking, now in less than 3 days. The idea of going outside of his own village was extremely tantalizing, and he couldn't go 7 seconds without thinking about it. A grin rose on his face. Whatcha think the sand village is like? He murmured, and Shikamaru, who had been about to leave, turned and looked at him. I've heard some things. The people aren't exactly friendly with outsiders, from what my dad's told me. I don't really get why Sandaime wants to take us there, it just seems troublesome. You think everything is troublesome, Naruto pointed out. Still, it doesn't sound like a good idea to me. The Kazekage is unbalanced, I've heard. You can't tell with him. He might decide to turn on Sandaime at any minute. Well, that's what my dad thinks, anyway. Does your dad know him? The Kazekage? No, well, he's met him, but he doesn't know him. Is your dad coming with us to the sand village? Yes, he's one of Sandaime's escorts. Wow, so he must be super strong, huh? Shikamaru raised an eyebrow. He is a jounin. Of course he's strong, although he does let mom push him around a lot. Really? Is she a ninja too? My mom? No. She doesn't like fighting. But your dad still lets her boss him around? She's not even a ninja, and she's allowed to boss around a jounin? Shikamaru shrugged. It's a troublesome thing I've given up trying to understand. Iruka-sensei is always telling me to respect my superiors. Shouldn't that count for everyone? Shouldn't your mom have to listen to your dad? He is her superior, right? He's an elite ninja. Shikamaru shrugged again. I don't know. Naruto frowned pensively, rubbing his chin as he mulled this over. It made no sense. The jounin were the pride of Konoha, the best of the best, and to let a civilian. Af. Naruto groaned, shaking his head. Whatever. This is all too confusing. Stupid book, stupid ninja ceremony crap. I just want to get stronger. Who cares about all this history garbage? It's already happened, so who cares? Tossing the book away in disgust and deciding to ignore the oddity of a civilian bossing around an elite, he slumped back and stared at the sky again. How'd you handle all that studying? He asked. When no answer came, he looked where Shikamaru had been standing to find him gone. Nowhere to be found. Vanished. Naruto sighed. It had happened again. The first chance to skip out had presented itself, and Nara Shikamaru, like so many others, had taken it. Nobody ever hung around for any longer than was polite. Nobody stayed and talked to him for the fun of it. They never wanted to, they just did it because their parents had taught them politeness. It had all happened before. Who cared? Nobody. Uzumaki Naruto was alone again. And he should have been used to it by now. It shouldn't have hurt anymore for how often it had happened, for how often he spent his time by himself. It shouldn't have hurt. But it did. No matter how many times it happened, looking up at who he thought had been listening to him only to find no one there always hurt. Naruto? How's that report coming? The boy said nothing as he slurped his ramen. Iruka sighed. Naruto had seemed particularly sullen when Iruka had found the boy strolling aimlessly about the village with his hands stuffed in his pockets, so Iruka had, despite knowing he really couldn't afford it, offered to buy him lunch. As usual, Naruto had wanted ramen. Okay, Naruto muttered. But it's so boring. Well, if you actually had done the work I assigned, you wouldn't have to do this. I'm giving you a break here. I'm being extremely nice. One report and the slate is wiped clean. You said you were interested in the subject, the Byakugan specifically. You even have a classmate with the Byakugan ability. You should speak to Hinata about it. She could probably help you along. If you find the books I lent you so boring, there's an alternative. Yeah, Naruto said, stirring his ramen with his chopsticks. Maybe. His voice trailed off and his head turned. Iruka glanced at the boy to find his wide blue eyes riveted on something. Considering that the something in question wasn't his ramen, it was quite a noteworthy event. Iruka followed his student's gaze and found he was looking at two of his classmates, Yamanaka Ino and Harino Sakura. The two girls noticed them, and Iruka raised a hand. Hello, Ino Sakura, he said with a pleasant smile. Hi, Iruka-sensei, they said in return, smiling themselves. They didn't bother greeting Naruto, but the blonde boy was too enthralled with them to make any note of it. When the two were gone, Iruka turned back to Naruto and asked, So someone has a crush, does he? Huh. Naruto snapped his attention back to his instructor, face going bright red. No. I don't have a crush on nobody. Iruka smirked as he slurped up a bite of his lunch. Sure, Naruto, sure. No crush at all. Hey. Shut up, Iruka-sensei. I don't. Is it Ino? She's pretty popular. No. Oh, Sakura then? She's a nice girl. I can understand why you'd have a crush on her. Naruto glared at Iruka heatedly. I do not have a crush on Sakura-chan. Oh, Sakura-chan, is it? Oh, I'm sorry, Naruto, I didn't realize you were so intimate with her. Shut up. Iruka laughed. Come now, Naruto, all in fun. I'm sorry to upset you. It's nothing to be ashamed of, and you know I won't tell anyone. No problem if you like a girl. The fire in Naruto's eyes dimmed. Alright, I like Sakura. Iruka smiled. Have you tried to talk to her? What? Are you kidding? What would I say? She wouldn't wanna, I mean. How do you know unless you try? Oh, what do you know, Iruka-sensei? Chuckling, Iruka ate more ramen and glanced around. Oh, I know more than you think, Naruto. But it sounds like you're not too interested in this line of conversation, so what say we change it? Naruto smiled, relieved. Yeah, Iruka-sensei, have you ever been to the Sand Village? A few times, yes. Shikamaru says the people are mean there. Is that true? Well, not mean, really just isolated. The people of the Sand don't get along very well with people from other villages. From what I know of their culture, they consider shinobi from the other hidden villages weak. But Leaf Nin aren't weak. Where do they get off calling us weak? Now, Iruka said soothingly, knowing that if he let Naruto go any further he would end up ranting at the top of his lungs for over an hour. Iruka had been subjected to quite a few of Naruto's feverishly angry monologues and knew that nothing not nailed down was safe from the wrath of Uzumaki. Naruto would likely end up throwing his bowl at the ground and stomping on it, pretending it was a Sand Nin's head. I know we aren't weak, Iruka continued. But several villages carry the same opinion about their shinobi. Many of our own do. Have you ever heard Yoshinanaki talk about Konoha's ninja? He can argue for days about why we're better than any other corps of shinobi in history. I guess. So you've been there though? What's it look like? Sand everywhere. I haven't been there in quite a while. Most likely things have changed. You'll be there to see it for yourself in a few days. Just wait and surprise yourself, huh? Sure. I guess so. Iruka sighed as he stirred his ramen, which was now just a bowl of broth, and wondered about what he'd been told in the Hokage's private chambers. I wonder if Sabaku no Gaara will really get along with Naruto. If he's unbalanced, like Hokage-sama says, will he take kindly to anyone? What if he hurts Naruto? Hey, Iruka-sensei. Can I have seconds? Huh? Oh, sure. Sure. Thanks. I'm sure Hokage-sama has taken that possibility into account. He'll know what to do. I should just trust him. He isn't the Hokage for nothing. The night was dry, as it always was, and cold as it always was. Night was blisteringly cold in the village hidden in the sand, and no one knew it better than Sabaku no Gaara. As he gazed solemnly at the village that was his home and his prison, young Gaara wondered what the people were doing. Why was no one else out at night like he was? How could they stay in their homes every night? Yashimaru had told him once that other people slept at night, but Gaara had no idea what that meant. Apparently other people weren't able to move around all the time. They ran out of energy. Gaara didn't understand this. He never felt out of energy. He stayed awake all the time. Yashimaru said that was because he was special. It had to do with the same thing that made him unable to feel pain. Was it the sand? Gaara didn't know. He'd asked his father, his tutor, anyone who was willing to speak to him, a list that was dishearteningly short, but no one was able to enlighten him. No one seemed particularly interested in finding out for him, either, even though he was the son of the Kazekage. Then again, he knew that some people didn't consider him a son of anyone except the devil. He was commonly called a monster, a failed experiment, a dangerous gamble. Never to his face, not yet, anyway, only when they thought he wasn't listening. They're sleeping because they aren't monsters, they aren't dangerous, they aren't special. That was what Yashimaru called him, special, and Yashimaru was the only one who mattered. He was the only one who talked to him, who was friendly with him, who cared about what happened to him. Gaara had long since decided that Yashimaru was the only person in the village that he could trust. No one else, not even his father. Don't worry, Gaara. The others just don't understand you. They're ignorant, and they don't want to understand. You're not a monster. You're not dangerous. You're just a little boy. A very special little boy. But the other villagers don't see that. They're scared of you because you're different. But being different isn't bad. You're not bad, are you, Gaara? No, of course not. He had ruffled Gaara's hair then, a smile on his face, and Gaara had felt comfort. He wasn't sure if he understood love all that well, but he thought he loved Yashimaru. He was nice. And that was something he couldn't say about anyone else he'd ever met. Not his father, not the guards, not the other children, not anyone. Just Yashimaru. He was nice. And Gaara loved him. Chapter 4:13 The journey begins. The day had come. The third Hokage, along with his Jounin and Chunin escorts, left the village of Konoha at 5 in the morning, followed closely by a series of blurry-eyed, barely conscious students of the academy. Only 2 of the students weren't tired. One was Uchiha Sasuke, a stone-faced youth who never revealed anything by his appearance. He looked far too old for his age, as though he had seen and experienced things so far beyond his peers that he was already an adult within a child's body. The other, of course, was Uzumaki Naruto, who was far too excited to be leaving the walls of his village behind to complain about the hour. He was bouncing around, barely keeping his feet on the ground. The blonde's face was dominated by a beaming grin that stretched his face to the point where his eyes were closed. Hey. Iruka-sensei. How long's it gonna take to get there? Iruka smiled at his student's exuberance. There was something about Naruto's demeanor that always brightened his mood, even though most of his peers found that same something to be particularly annoying. It'll take at least a week, Naruto. And that's assuming we don't run into any obstacles along the way. Just enjoy the scenery for now. Naruto was disappointed to find that it would take so long to get to their destination, but he was still in such a good mood that it didn't dampen his spirits in the least. Instead of complaining, as Iruka had thought he might, Naruto simply danced back to his classmates and resumed walking, giggling softly under his breath, barely able to contain himself. Yuhi Kurenai, a Chunin like Iruka but well on her way to becoming a member of the elite, leaned close to him. How do you handle that boy, Iruka? Oh, come on, Iruka said with a grin. There's nothing wrong with him being excited. It's kind of refreshing, seeing him like that. What's so bad about it? Kurenai raised an eyebrow and shook her head. You're far too accepting of delinquent behavior, Iruka. A future shinobi should conduct himself with more restraint. According to what? He has spirit, Kurenai. He won't be some cookie-cutter ninja fighting for no better reason than it's my duty. We need more soldiers like him. He has real heart. Sure, Iruka. If you say so. I understand your sentiment, Iruka. Iruka turned and saw that Hatake Kakashi, a stern and stoic jounin, was walking beside him. The gray-haired ninja's face was covered, as ever, by his tight, black mask, but Iruka thought he saw a smile beneath it. Iruka smiled himself. You do? Certainly, Kakashi replied in his deep, cultured voice. A ninja with no drive is but a mindless puppet on his commander's strings. For a soldier to be effective, he must believe in what he does. If he does not, his heart will rebel against his body, and he will be torn in two. Iruka smiled. Well said, Kakashi. Another of those hidden smiles. Thank you, Iruka. Kakashi was a mysterious man, one of those people you couldn't read no matter how long you knew him. Iruka could testify to that. He'd been acquainted with the tall, thin, perpetually bored jounin for years and knew no more about him now than he had on the first day he'd met him. Hey. What ya talking about? Kakashi turned and regarded Naruto silently. You know, Iruka said you should be worried less about what we're doing. That report of yours needs doing, now doesn't it? Naruto pouted. Come on. You said no work. This a vacation. Yes, and if you had done your report before today you wouldn't have any work. You knew the assignment. I gave you books to research it. You could have finished it before now. That you didn't is no one's fault but your own. Naruto pouted, but he didn't object. He simply nodded and sulked as he walked away, hands stuffed into his pockets. Iruka chuckled as he watched the boy kicking at stones in the road. He's not as confrontational with you as with the rest of us, Kurenai noted with a frown. Irika glanced at her. Perhaps that's because I treat him like a person instead of a cancer. Irika's face was pleasant enough, he was smiling, but there was an undercurrent of irritation in his voice. Kurenai looked at him without comment for a long moment before turning away. Kakashi chuckled. It seems Kurenai can't bring herself to forget. I suppose not, Irika replied. It's a shame it seems as though I'm the only one who can see in Naruto the potential to be a great ninja. Surely not Hokage-sama holds much that same belief. And you? What do you think? Kakashi raised an eyebrow over his single visible eye, the other was covered by his Hitaiite headband. Me? Well, he has heart. I can say that much with confidence. But Kurenai has a point, he'll need to learn self-control. Discipline. Otherwise he'll be nothing to this village's military. Irika frowned thoughtfully. That is true, but it's still early. Indeed. Hyuga Hinata hadn't had to ask her father's permission to take the trip to the sand. In fact, she'd actually wanted to stay. Her father, however, was adamantly for it. She'd had no choice in the matter, despite what Irika had said. You are a Hyuga, her father, Hayashi, had said. You will become a true warrior. This is your first mission. That fool of an instructor of yours, Irika, may call it a vacation, but it is no vacation for you. I expect you to uphold the reputation of our clan, and that means you will not be having fun. You will take care to pay attention to the Sand's activities. You had better have something substantial to report to me when you return. Hinata hadn't said a word in response. It wasn't her place to defy his word. She was the heir to the Hyuga name. She was Hyuga Hayashi's eldest child, but that meant little. She had no authority in her house. All she did was follow her father's orders. She didn't have the courage to defy him, even if she'd had the right to do it. But she also felt she didn't have the courage to handle being so far away from the only home she knew. It was a double bind. She was too afraid to defy his orders, but also too afraid to comply with them. Stepping away from one fire only to find herself in another one. She thought she would faint. Her head already felt hazy and her vision was beginning to blur. It didn't help any that she hadn't been able to get to sleep the night before until 2 in the morning. So not only was she frightened out of her wits, but she was also exhausted. Then she looked up and saw him. He was chipper this morning, more so than he was most mornings. His eyes were bright, a smile resting easy on his lips. He was looking around seemingly at everything. Unlike her, he seemed intoxicated by the new scenery, and was positively glowing with excitement. Everything that frightened her, he gasped at with surprised delight, pointing it out to whoever happened to be next to him. Hinata admired Uzumaki Naruto. In this, she was isolated from her peers and her elders. She was the only person in the entirety of Konoha who looked upon the blonde's antics with awe rather than disdain. She didn't think him a nuisance, she didn't see him as annoying. He was brave. Hinata knew he was an orphan. He had no parents, and was probably the only 9-year-old in the country who lived on his own. Naruto was provided for by the village in terms of food, water, and electricity, but still to have the responsibility of living by oneself at so young was something Hinata couldn't fathom. There were a lot of things about Naruto she couldn't fathom. She wished she had his confidence. He was so easygoing, so determined, so Naruto. There wasn't a way to describe what he was in Hinata's light gray eyes, none that she had been able to verbalize. He was just Naruto, and she admired him. Of course, Naruto wouldn't know her from anyone else in Konoha. She'd never spoken to him, not even once just to say hello. She kept her distance, the same as nearly everyone else did, just for a completely different reason. Just like she didn't have the courage to defy her father, Hinata didn't have the courage to speak to the boy she so admired. Whenever she saw his eyes, her heart pounded and she worried that perhaps he had caught her watching him. If he ever did, he would ask her why, and she wouldn't be able to answer. She would faint if he ever caught her watching him. And even though he didn't catch her watching him, she almost fainted anyway when she found that he had bounced his way over to where she was. He wasn't looking at her, still enthralled with the surrounding trees as he was, but to have him so close to her she could almost reach out and touch the fabric of his jacket. Hey! She jumped, eyes widening so far that they might have fallen from their sockets, and nervously turned her face to him. Yes, there was no mistake, he was looking at her. The exclamation had been directed at her. Her face burned as a deep, furious blush overtook her. Why, yes. She finally managed to stammer. You're Hinata, right? Hyuga Hinata? Her tongue was suddenly too thick to move, and she barely managed to nod. Cool. See, cuz Irika-sensei says I gotta do some dumb old report on bloodline limits, and I heard you got one right? Oh, what's it called? Shikamura told me I'm Saskatchewan? No, that's not it, it was be something but. Byakugan, Hinata murmured. Yeah, Naruto said in a voice so loud it made her flinch. That's it. Byakugan. Well, anyways, I gotta get this stupid thing done so Zyrika-sensei will leave me alone. I figure you know more about bloodline limits than any old book, seeing's how you got one. She was so sure that he noticed her blushing he had to see it, didn't he? It had to be so obvious. But he didn't say anything about it. He didn't even raise an eyebrow at it. In her idealized thoughts, this was because he was being polite. In reality, he really didn't notice how uncomfortable he was making the young Hyuga. So, you think you could tell me about the Byakugan? Oh, sure. I'll tell you what I know. Naruto grinned and tugged at his pack, bringing it around to his side and pulling out a notebook and a pencil. Irika-sensei says I gotta have notes and stuff, too. So, what do you know? Her blush only intensified with his eyes on her like they were. She could feel his gaze on her skin, as if it were a physical thing, and it took her a long moment to gather her thoughts enough to form a reply. Well, the Byakugan is a Jujutsu, you know what that is, don't you? Yeah. Shikamaru told me about them. It's a jutsu you do with your eye, right? He pointed at his own eye for emphasis. I wonder if anybody can, like shoot lasers or something. That'd be so cool, just blink and zap. Yeah. Hinata actually managed a smile. Well, the Byakugan can't do that, but it lets you have a view of everything around you, even behind you. Naruto grinned. Old man Hokage's always saying he's got eyes in the back of his head, so I shouldn't do anything, but you guys really do, huh? Sort of. Yeah, kind of. And another thing, the Byakugan lets you see through things like walls and doors, even people's skin. Whoa, X-ray vision. Awesome. Hey, bet you don't get to play pin the tail on the donkey, huh? You could just see through the blindfold. Naruto laughed at his joke, and Hinata chuckled nervously. She noticed a few of her classmates turned to look at Naruto with annoyed expressions on their faces. She didn't understand why they found him so annoying. It was funny in a way. Why was laughing annoying? She liked his laugh. It was loud and clear. He didn't worry about other people staring at him when he laughed. When Naruto thought something was funny, he never just chuckled. He laughed out loud. He threw his head back and howled. No discreetness in Naruto. She admired that. When his laughter subsided, Naruto scratched his head. So, anyways, hey, you said you could see through skin. That how you can see the, chakra circle whatever? Chakra circulatory system? Yeah. That thing. Yes. What's it look like? Well, I can't use it yet. My father says I should be able to, but I can't. I try, but... Oh well, that's no biggie. Just keep on trying. That's what I do when I can't do something. I keep trying till I can. I know, I've seen you. Something about those words, hearing those simple words from the boy she admired, made Hinata feel more confident, nearly able to face the days ahead. Not quite, but almost. There was just something about his steadfast faith in himself that made her think that maybe, just maybe, she could be strong like him. She wished she could tell him this. But she couldn't. Gaara-sama. Gaara-sama, are you in here? The small, red-haired boy turned and looked over at Yashimaru, who was looking at him through the doorway of his bedroom. Yashimaru? The young man smiled as he opened the door and stepped inside. Ah, good. I'm glad to see you here, Gaara-sama. Standing out there in the night all the time isn't good for you. Yashimaru ran a hand through his short blonde hair. He reached into a pocket of his pants and withdrew a small stuffed bear. You must have dropped this, Gaara-sama. I found it outside yesterday. He smiled as he handed Gaara the toy. You should take care to keep an eye on your belongings, Gaara-sama. Gaara held the bear close, rubbing his cheek against the soft material. I lost her. It's fine, Gaara-sama. I found it for you. Just be careful from now on, okay? Gaara nodded against the bear's fur. Yes, I'll be careful. He had dropped the bear while running from some of the villagers. They were older folk, 2 decades older than Gaara himself, and had been red-faced drunk. They had to be. They were slurring their words, stumbling over themselves, and they had been chasing him. No sober person would chase him. No person in their right mind would chase him. Gaara hugged the bear tighter. Sabaku says she's glad you found her, he murmured softly. Sabaku? Yashimaru repeated. Is that your bear's name? Gaara nodded. Just like me. Yashimaru smiled. I see. Well, Sabaku, you're very welcome. Gaara smiled, too. After a moment of silence, Yashimaru slipped his hands into his pockets. Gaara-sama, there will be some people from the Leaf coming soon. The Hokage needs to meet with Kazekage-sama. He's bringing some others with him. Gaara looked up. There's someone coming from the Leaf that the Hokage thinks you should meet, Gaara-sama. He doesn't say why, but he thinks it will be good for you. Confused, Gaara stared at his caretaker. Me? Why would someone want to meet me? This person will hate me, and run just like everyone else. The boy buried his face in the bear's fur. No, Gaara-sama, Yashimaru said. I have heard about the boy who's coming to meet you. He will not hate you. He will not run. This boy is not like everyone else. I don't believe that, Gaara said, voice muffled. Everyone hates me. Everyone runs. I've seen them. I've seen everyone. I don't hate you, Gaara-sama. I don't run. Yashimaru is special. A smile on his face, Yashimaru said, so is this boy. Trust me, Gaara-sama, you'll want to meet him. It will be good for you. No one is special like Yashimaru. Gaara was now speaking to the bear. He turned around and walked toward the window that dominated the west wall of his room. Everyone else runs, they hate me, they call me monster, you've heard them. Only Yashimaru doesn't. Yashimaru calls me special. The blonde-haired man sighed. Gaara did this whenever he felt uncomfortable with a situation. He slipped into himself, ignoring anyone else around him. He seemed to be talking to the bear he called Sabaku, but he would have talked like this even if he hadn't had an audience. He talked to himself often. There was no one else to talk to. With another sigh, Yashimaru turned on his heel and opened the door. As he slipped out of the room, he said, the boy should be here in a week or so, Gaara-sama. Gaara said nothing in response. Yashimaru walked away. Chapter 5:1 For Fears and Hopes. They surrounded him. Somehow they'd managed to sneak around him, and they hadn't wasted any time. They just attacked, jumping out all at once like a team of synchronized swimmers who felt so confident in their ability that they'd left the water in favor of the infinitely more cumbersome arena of land. But they had no idea who they were dealing with. Before any of them had a chance to land a strike, he was on the move. Flipping a kunai into each hand, he let fly in the same instant that he leapt out of the way, taking two down as he rolled to the side and sprang back up on his feet. He whirled and sent a foot slamming into another's face, the satisfying crack resounding through the air. One sought to take advantage of his turn back, but he was too quick. He leapt up, twisted in the air, and sent a handful of shuriken into his attacker's face. As he landed, he spun on his heel and brought up his hand to smack away a sword. He bled, but he barely noticed. His hand shot out quick as lightning and snatched the swordsman's wrist, snapping it with an expert twist. The katana fell with a clatter to the ground, and he instantly scooped it up. Blade in hand, he was death incarnate. He sighed through the remaining ninja with all the grace of a professional dancer, every slice met with flesh, every slash critical, every thrust lethal. He whirled about his enemies like a steel whirlwind, a blood-stained tornado, sword singing its chorus of victory throughout the night, sounding brighter and holier to his ears than heaven's choir. This was his calling. This was his destiny. He had been born wedded to the battlefield. Naruto. He started, his katana fell to the ground and he stumbled, stepping on it and snapping it in half. As Naruto stared forlornly at the broken stick, he growled at the interference. Whirling around, he glared at Iruka. Hey! I was fighting a group of missing nin. The young Chunin chuckled as he rubbed at the scar running across the bridge of his nose. I'm sure you were, Naruto, but dinner's ready, and if you don't eat now, the others will take your share. Come on. Stuffing his hands into the pockets of his jacket, Naruto kicked at the dirt as he walked over to his instructor. I was doing good, too. That was an important mission. You guys could have died if not for me. You should thank me by giving me more food. Iruka chuckled. We're all grateful for your service, Naruto, but we have to make sure everyone eats, otherwise we won't all be in fighting condition. Then what happens if you run into an enemy you can't defeat? A group of S-ranked missing nins, say? We won't be able to back you up. I was fighting S-ranked missing nins, Naruto exclaimed haughtily as he sat down and took the bowl of stew Iruka offered him. All the rest of them are too scared to fight me. Oh, is that right? Wow, Naruto, I guess we'll have to promote you pretty soon here. If you're already taking on S-ranked criminals, you're probably ready for Joun and we won't even need you to take the exams. Naruto grinned. See? You're smart, Iruka-sensei. I don't need no stupid tests. I'm too good for that stuff. Some of the others turned to look at him with dark expressions on their faces. They were scowling at him, clearly annoyed. Iruka could hear what they were thinking. Him? Too good for exams? He can't even pass one of them. Iruka sighed. They couldn't let anything pass. No matter what Naruto said, they all had that expression. It didn't matter if he was clearly joking. They glared at him as if he just said the most insulting thing they'd ever heard. There was only one of his students close enough to hear Naruto's proclamation who didn't react to it with ire. She looked at him with bright eyes and a smile. Hyuga Hinata. If Naruto wants to have a girlfriend, I think he might have a better chance with her than with Sakura. She likes him. Her eyes say it all. If her patience with him doesn't all those questions he's asked her the past few days. She never gets annoyed. So, Iruka said, making sure to keep his voice low enough so that Hinata wouldn't hear, how's your report coming? Huh. Oh, that. It's cool. So you took my advice and talked to Hinata, huh? Oh, yeah? She knows a lot of stuff. A bunch of the stuff in that old book you gave me was too confusing. She told me what all of it meant. And the way she told me about the Byakugan, why can't I remember that stupid name? Anyways, it's a lot cooler than I thought. Shikamaru didn't explain it good enough. Iruka chuckled. So have you started writing yet? Oh, not yet. I'm still writing notes and stuff. I'm almost done. Hinata says that's why my grades suck. I don't take notes. So she says I should write a lot of stuff down so the report's easier. I've told him that. Too evidently he finds it easier to listen to someone his own age, or maybe it's just because she's so quiet she can have been very stern about the admonition. Iruka wondered about this development. For the first time since Naruto had been entered into the academy, he was taking the work seriously. So taking thorough notes this time around, huh? Well, yeah. Hinata's pretty smart, you know? I figure she probably knows what she's talking about, plus, all the stuff I've been learning is hard to remember. I'm gonna have to write it down to make sure I still got it when I write the report. I've told him that, too. I'm beginning to think it's just because she isn't an instructor he doesn't feel like he's being bossed around by one of the higher-ups. He's being advised by a peer. With a start, Iruka realized he had forgotten about his dinner. He took a bite, grimacing when he discovered it to be cold already. Sighing heavily, he ate it anyway, gulping it down with the discipline of a soldier who didn't know when his next meal would be. He didn't like beef stew all that much, and could only really stomach it when it was piping hot cold. It nearly made him vomit. Naruto had finished his dinner already, and since the conversation had lulled to a stop, he got up and went back out to find another stick so he could practice his swordsmanship. As he watched his energetic student vanquish his invisible foes, Iruka pondered about what he'd been told. He turned and glanced at Hinata. When she looked at him, he smiled and nodded. Hinata. Hello, Iruka-sensei, she said shyly. Smile widening, he waved her over. Could you come here a minute? I need to talk to you about something. Setting an empty bowl aside, she stood up and walked over. Kneeling again beside her instructor, she looked at him curiously. Yes? I notice you've been helping Naruto these past few days. Oh well, he says he needs to do a report on bloodline limits, and then he asked if I would help him. Is that okay? Of course. I'd hoped he'd ask you about it. You're the one student I have who can help him the most in understanding bloodline limits. Perhaps Sasuke, but there can be no assurance that his will even awaken and he wouldn't want to speak about it. Anyway, so, things have been going well? Hinata nodded. Why yes. I hear you got him to take notes, quite the feat. I've never gotten him to write a single thing down that isn't an assignment. What did you say? Well, I just said that Hokage-sama told me once that a strong ninja is one who can analyze information he receives in the field. Oh, observant, you know? And that note-taking helps with that. The more you write things down, the easier it gets to remember it. And if you remember things easily, you start noticing more. Well, that's what Hokage-sama told me. I just mentioned that to Naruto-kun. Naruto-kun? And no doubt. She likes him. Iruka laughed. Well, seems you know how to talk to him already. Usually, all it takes for Naruto to do something is for you to mention it might help him on his road to becoming Hokage. Seems you did that. I also said that if he took notes more often, it would be easier to do and he could do it in class so his grades would improve. Iruka nodded. He mentioned that. Well, Hinata, I'm glad to see you're helping him out. Seems he could learn a lot from you. Hinata blushed. Thank you, Iruka-sensei. A thought occurred to him. Sometime in the near future, Iruka was to give a report detailing which students got along well together and would benefit from being a team. Since, once the students graduated, they would be placed into 3-man squads under a jounin commander, it was important to ensure that they would work together. I'll have to recommend that Naruto and Hinata be placed in the same squad. He had thought about recommending that Sakura be placed with Naruto, just to be nice, but it was obvious that Hinata would be a better choice. She was a smart girl, and Naruto listened to her. It was obvious they got along. Naruto was very friendly when given a chance, something no one else had ever done. Most of the students considered him a hopeless, delinquent idiot. It was decided. When the time came, Iruka would put Naruto and Hinata in the same squad. He was unsure about the third, but he figured someone would come along to round out their skills. I'll need someone advanced, Sasuke? Maybe I'll just wait and see what happens. Iruka-sensei? Iruka glanced at Hinata, who was watching Naruto intently. Yes? Why does everyone hate Naruto-kun? I know he does some things that are bad, but why would they? Iruka knew, of course. The adults of the village, those old enough to remember the Kyuubi, the cursed 9-tailed fox that had attacked Konoha, hated Naruto for his association with the beast. They viewed him not as a vessel for the Kyuubi, a living prison to keep it at bay, but as its reincarnation, and thus wished him dead. The children, Iruka could only guess at. He thought perhaps their parents had told them not to speak with him, and while they didn't understand why, they did it out of obedience. Since this left Naruto isolated, he had no choice but to act out, to be loud and obnoxious so that people would pay attention to him. Iruka knew from experience that even bad attention was better than none. It hurt less to be yelled at than to be ignored. When people yelled, it meant they were investing energy into dealing with you, they were focused on you. That meant something. It gave meaning to Naruto's existence, something he had precious little of. Iruka, who had been a class clown himself in his youth, understood this all too well. I don't know, Iruka said in a soft voice. I guess they're just more easily annoyed than we are. It's okay though. Naruto's strong. He can handle himself, he has for years. But it has to hurt him, doesn't it? I'm sure it does, but he never lets it bother him. Hinata smiled. I know. She has it bad. I get the feeling whoever ends up their commander will have an interesting situation to deal with. He chuckled at the thought. What's so funny, Iruka-sensei? Huh. Oh, nothing. I just wonder if he realizes that defeating a real ninja will be a great deal more difficult than swinging a stick at the air. Hinata smiled again as she turned her attention back to Naruto. He still hadn't stopped moving. He was a constant blur of motion, swinging and jumping and kicking and hopping. He certainly has stamina that will be an asset to him later on, Iruka thought. But unless he learns to control his movements, he'll end up with more trouble than anything else. I should give him some exercises when we get back, so he doesn't waste his energy forming bad habits. The day was nearing when the Hokage would arrive, and Yashimaru was beginning to wonder how Gaara would react to meeting someone like this Uzumaki Naruto he'd been told about. Naruto was a Jinchuriki, like Gaara, and that meant that they would get along well, according to the hopes of the Hokage. Yashimaru wasn't so sure. And he realized that, if indeed they ended up taking up arms against each other, the battle would be bloody. The Kyuubi and the Shikaku were not to be taken lightly, even by the strongest, most able of ninja. And while the demons were weakened by their imprisonment, they were still powerful. For this reason, Yashimaru hoped that the Hokage was correct in his assumptions. A bloodbath was the last thing he needed. Besides, having a friend would likely calm Gaara down, thus lowering the chances of him wreaking havoc in the village. There had already been a couple of instances in which the red-haired child had hurt one of his peers. Yashimaru chuckled when he realized the irony of the term. None had yet been serious, but they had happened, so the chance was there. At the moment, Gaara was staring out his window. He did this often, gazing forlornly out at the rest of the village, idly stroking the head of the stuffed bear he called Sabaku. The dark rings around his bright green eyes struck out particularly strong this day. Some people hypothesized that these rings had to do with the fact that Gaara could not sleep, but Yashimaru didn't think that was the case. If it were, why did not the rest of Gaara's body suffer? Why just his eyes? No, Yashimaru thought it was the mark of the Shikaku, the great raccoon. A few of his fellows shared this thought, but the theory wasn't very important to Yashimaru, and so he hadn't bothered to look into it, nor had he asked anyone else about it. The boy turned those piercing, ringed eyes to him. Huh! The Leafnin sent a scout ahead to inform us that the Hokage will be here soon. Are you ready to meet Uzumaki Naruto? Gaara frowned, turning back to the window. I don't want to meet anyone, he'll just run away. Yashimaru sighed. For all his attempts, he had not been able to convince Gaara that Naruto wouldn't run. There were any number of reactions the other boy might have, but he would not run. Yashimaru had been told much about the holder of the Kyuubi. He was confident in the extreme. Running was not in his nature. It would be rude not at least to try talking to him, Gaara-sama. I don't care, it's rude to run away. He won't run away, Gaara-sama. I swear it. Don't you trust me? He will. There was no getting through to him. He refused to listen. Yashimaru decided that the only person who could talk to him now would be Uzumaki Naruto himself. Only when they met and Naruto didn't run would Gaara accept the truth, and even then he would likely be suspicious. Yashimaru sighed and ran a hand through his hair. Well, we'll see. He will be here in a couple of days. You'll see then. Naruto is different. Still, Gaara's doubts were making Yashimaru second-guess it himself. The thought that Naruto would run away, while undeniably unlikely, dominated his mind. What if he did? He'd been assured it wouldn't happen, but what if it did? Then what would happen? Yashimaru knew what would happen. Gaara would sink even deeper into himself, and would be even less inclined to hold back when next he decided to attack someone. If Naruto turned his back on Gaara, the next time the Shikaku's sand was released it would be stained with blood. Yashimaru prayed that wouldn't happen. Chapter 6, 1-5 Fated Meeting. Whoa, this is the Sand's village? Naruto happened to have been next to the Hokage when he said that, and the old man chuckled as he stroked his beard. Yes, Naruto, the village hidden in the sand. Impressive, isn't it? Naruto nodded emphatically. Iruka-sensei was right, there is sand everywhere. Sandame, as he was called by the majority of the population of Konoha, looked around. Yes, quite true. just as our village is surrounded by forests. Naruto's sandals crunched on the stone path as he walked. The homes were all uniform in design, squat, square dwellings with red roofs and walls the same color as the sand that dominated the rest of the scenery, making them blend in to the point where, if you squinted your eyes, it looked as though the roofs were floating in midair. The only thing Naruto could see that was green were the cacti in front of each house, spiked, silent, green-clad security guards keeping watch over the streets. Other than that, Naruto could see no plant life anywhere. For a boy who had spent all of his life in a thriving forest, such a sight was daunting. Sandaime stopped Naruto with a hand to his shoulder, then turned and regarded the rest of his company. He surveyed the students. Each of you will be placed in groups. 3 groups of 6 and 1 group of 7. One of my escorts will be placed at the head of each group, and will provide you with a tour of this village. Pay attention to what you see, ask questions, but be sure to stay in your group. Do you understand? They all nodded. Fine. Now split up into groups. Remember, 3 groups of 6 and 1 group of 7. The students did so quickly and silently, probably because they were tired of walking and in no mood to talk. Only Naruto and Uchiha Sasuke showed no signs of fatigue. Very good. Kakashi, Kurenai, Mizuki, and Asuma. Each of you take a group. Your first task will be to find a place to rest. The students look ready to fall asleep on their feet. Iruka, you come with me. The rest of you are free to go where you wish for the time being. Be ready for when I need you. Sir. The Chunin and Jounin called out as one. As the others all left for various destinations, Naruto looked curiously up at Sandaime. What about me? He asked. You, Naruto, will come with me and Iruka. There is someone we would like you to meet. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Really? Who? The Kazekage's youngest son. His name is Sabaka no Gaara. This is part of the reason I allowed you to come with me for this meeting, the Kazekage, and I believe it would be beneficial to both of you. How come? Iruka smiled. Let's just say he deals with the same problems that you do, Naruto. He was confused by this more than anything, but Naruto shrugged and followed his instructor. As he walked, Naruto noticed that the houses were all the same. Everywhere he looked. The sand-colored box topped in red motif was as consistent as the sand that filled his lungs whenever he breathed too deeply. So if this Gaara guy is the Kazekage's son, Naruto murmured, then is he powerful? Sandaime chuckled. Very, he said. The power in his blood is quite remarkable. Ah, cool. Someone strong. All right. Iruka laughed nervously. Yes, well, don't go sparring with him right off. You'll likely end up losing quite a few teeth. Naruto waved off his instructor's concern. Yeah, I know. Still, Sandaime said, it is highly possible that you will learn something from young Gaara. He has been tutored in the shinobi arts for quite some time. Naruto grinned, rubbing his hands together. Oh, I think I like this guy already, let's go. Sandaime and Iruka chuckled. Ah, Hokage, so nice to see you again. Something about the Kazekage's voice made Naruto think he wasn't telling the truth. He sounded irritated. He sounded as if he had no time for the Hokage and was incensed that he had dared encroach on his territory to waste his time. Kazekage, Sandaime replied, crossing his arms and smiling pleasantly. You're looking well. Naruto didn't think he looked all that well. The Kazekage was thin, his face haggard and gaunt. His black eyes were dark and angry. His hair was wiry and unkempt, black like his eyes. To Naruto, it looked as if he hadn't slept in months. So are you, the Kazekage murmured in his soft, raspy, angry voice. He sat down behind his desk and gestured. Sit, let us conduct business immediately. We've much to do and little time to do it. Yes, Sandaime said, sitting down. Well, now before we do that, you do remember our arrangement, do you not? Where is your youngest? The Kazekage glanced at Naruto, his eyes betraying no emotion. Oh yes, and well, Gaara is not here at the moment. Yashimaru, his caretaker, tells me he left some time ago. Iruka, Sandaime said without turning, take Naruto and search out young Gaara, would you? I think he will be rather easy to find. Doubtlessly, the Kazekage muttered. Iruka nodded and turned on his heel. Come on, Naruto. Let's go. As he turned to follow his instructor, Naruto thought he understood now what Iruka had meant. The Kazekage had seemed particularly disdainful of his son. Naruto wondered why. Yeah, let's find him, Naruto said, eyes gleaming with determination. Now. Iruka smiled. Yes. He sat on the swing, holding Sabaka in his arms, pushing himself with his toes. He watched the others playing kickball in the street. It looked like it might be fun. The others were laughing. He thought it seemed an easy enough game. They seemed to be making up their own rules during play, calling out fouls and goals with no semblance of coherency. It was as if the rules of the game were inconsequential, and the point was just to kick the ball and laugh. The score wasn't important, only the fun. Sabaka no Gaara couldn't think of a time he'd ever had fun. He wasn't even sure what fun was, exactly, only that other people had it, and it was a good thing. Gaara wished he could have fun like the others. But he couldn't. They wouldn't allow him to play with them, even when he asked nicely like Yashimara had taught him. They all stared at him with wide, frightened eyes, and never responded to his question, even if he asked again. He didn't understand why did they all run. What had he done? Yashimara had told him they were just ignorant, but why did they hate him? Was he ugly? He had heard that people hated ugliness, perhaps he was ugly. He stared down at his hands. He did not think they were ugly hands, but maybe they were. How would he know? He only knew what his tutors taught him, they did not teach him what ugliness was. He continued to watch the game. One of them made a kick toward what Gaara thought was the goal. The kick, however, had been some sort of trick maneuver, because it flew upward at an arc perpendicular to the high wall behind the goal. The ball eventually landed atop the wall, effectively out of reach. The children all groaned. Oh no! How are we going to get it now? It's too smooth to climb up. We don't know that wall climbing jutsu yet. Somebody, get someone to help us get the ball. Gaara looked up at the ball. The wall was far too high for any of the children to reach, but they weren't special. Gaara smiled. He could finally show them. He could help. He got off the swing and set Sabaka onto it. He stepped forward, eyes on the ball, and thought hard about what he wanted. He wanted the ball. He wanted the ball in his hands. The sand began to move. He felt it, like extensions of his body, as it shifted toward him. He closed his eyes, focusing his mind on the object of his desire. The sand began to float about his body. He opened his eyes again and lifted his arm, reaching for the ball. The sand responded to his movement, moving with the sinuousness of a flying serpent through the air. The children watched the sand as it floated over their heads, eyes wide as it lifted the ball and carried it back to Gaara's waiting hands. The sand dissolved and fell back to the ground, its work complete. Gaara gazed, fascinated, at the round toy. He looked up at the children, who were now staring at him. Their eyes alternated between him and their ball, fists clenching and unclenching as they wondered what to do. Gaara held the ball out, attempting a smile to show them he wouldn't hurt them. Here. It's. Look, Naruto. Over there. That's him. Naruto followed Iruka's finger and saw a small, red-haired boy holding a rubber ball. He was standing before a large group of other children. From where he stood, Naruto could barely make out the boy say, "Here." He held out the ball. Naruto raised an eyebrow. He seems nice. It's Gaara, one boy cried. Sabaka no Gaara, another gasped. The boy's eyes widened, trembling as the other children turned and started running away. The ball fell from the boy's nerveless fingers. Wait! Don't leave me alone! Naruto gasped as sand began gathering around the boy's feet. As he cried out for the other children to come back, the sand shot out toward them and caught one of the girl's ankles. The boy's eyes were wide, his entire body shook with fear. He looked 2 seconds away from snapping. Naruto blinked several times as his hand reached up to cover his mouth. Naruto jumped as he saw a tall, blonde-haired man jet past him, running for the boy. Without thinking, Naruto followed him, eyes wide as he watched the boy's face. Sabaka no Gaara's expression was one Naruto recognized. He had seen it in the mirror far too many times. This red-haired boy's bright green eyes, they were Naruto's eyes. This boy he knew. Somehow Naruto could feel it. Gaara knew. The blonde-haired man jumped in front of the girl just as the sand snapped her ankle. Arms crossed over his face, the man gasped for breath as blood flowed from a gash made from the force of the sand. Gaara-sama! Please calm down! Naruto watched, heart pounding, as the girl limped away, screaming. That scream, it made Naruto's chest ache. He closed his eyes, fists clenched, breathing deeply through his nose. He knew what this was about. The children had run from Gaara as so many of Naruto's own peers had run, from ignorant terror. It was more often that the children of Konoha simply ignored him, but every once in a while he would come across someone whose parents had called him a monster, and they would run from him. That scream would leave their lips. That same scream. Naruto turned to look at the boy. Yashimara Gaara whimpered, tears falling down his face. Iruka was there. What happened? They are ran again, Gaara said in a voice barely higher than a whisper. They always run, always. Gaara-sama, the man called Yashimara murmured. Gaara lowered his head into his hands as he began to shake. He's like me, Naruto whispered. Iruka glanced at him. Naruto? Just like me. Naruto, are you all right? He didn't answer. Instead, he walked forward, leaned down and picked up the ball at Gaara's feet. He looked at it silently for a moment. He tried to give them this, but they ran. He tried to be nice, and they screamed at him, "They're just like the people back home, this isn't fair, not fair at all." Naruto heard Yashimara ask Irika, "Are you one of the shinobi from Konoha?" "Yes." "And that is?" "Yes." "I thought so." Naruto frowned thoughtfully. This Yashimara person knew about him? Had Sandaime told the people here about him? Had this meeting been planned from the start? Old man Hokage must have known he was like me, maybe he thought. Gaara looked up from his hands, eyes still wet with tears. Who are you?" he asked. Naruto grinned broadly. "Hi. You're Gaara, right? My name's Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto. Nice to meet ya." Gaara lowered his hands, staring quizzically at the blonde boy in front of him. "And Naruto? From the Leaf Village?" "Yep." You aren't running away." "Why'd I do that? No sense in running away for saying hello. Sides, old man Hokage told me he wanted me to meet you. Dunno exactly why, but hey, you seem like a good enough guy. So what to doin' out here?" Gaara continued to stare, making no attempt at speech. It was clear he was shocked. Naruto understood the feeling. The first time Irika had spoken to him outside of class, he had been unsure of how to react. Forced to be alone for reasons he didn't know all throughout his life, Naruto had been unable to respond. The same was evidently true of Sabaka no Gaara. Don't worry about them," Naruto continued, trying to get a response out of him. "Who cares about them anyways? Probably can't play any good, lots of guys in my village don't know how to play any real games, they just make stuff up." That's what they were doing. Gaara spoke as if he were in a trance, unable to comprehend what was happening. Naruto had a sudden urge to hunt down those kids and give each of them a black eye. Who did they think they were? "Well, see? Sheesh figures." Naruto bounced the ball on the ground, catching it as it came back up. "You know any games, Gaara? Any real games?" "And no, not really." Too bad." "Well, hey. I'll teach you a couple. I know lots of games. I live by myself, see, so I gotta do something to pass time. Old man Hokage says we'll be here a while. He's got a lot of weird stuff to talk to the Kazekage about, says it's important, and confidential." "Yeah. Confidential. You mean you'll play with me? You won't leave me alone?" "Sure. You seem cool. And sides, games are more fun with two people. Where do you live, Gaara?" He pointed toward the building Naruto and Irika had left from about 20 minutes before. There. Come on. There's a lot of wind out here." Gaara stood silent for a moment before following. Naruto glanced over his shoulder and grinned. "Come on, slowpoke. Let's make the best out of the day, huh?" Not knowing what else to do, Gaara nodded. Yashimara and Irika watched the two boys as they walked away. "Seems they've already hit it off," Irika murmured. Well, looks like Hokage-sama was right." Yashimara smiled slightly. "I'm glad, if they hadn't things might have gotten ugly." "Perhaps, but that's the thing about Naruto, I guess he makes friends easily, when given the chance." "Gaara-sama seems out of sorts. I suppose he's simply surprised to have someone his own age treat him so civilly. No one here trusts him. I hear your Hokage has outlawed the discussing of the fact that Naruto is a Jinchuriki. Kazekage-sama has made no such regulation. All know of the Shikaku." Irika frowned. How unfair and so pointless. Only Gaara-sama doesn't realize what the Shikaku is. He knows that is what it is called, his special power, but he doesn't realize it is a bijou. Irika smiled slightly. "I'll have to tell Hokage-sama that things are going smoothly. It probably won't be long before Naruto is friends with Sabaka no Gaara. He isn't used to kindness. You'd think I would know better by now than to doubt Hokage-sama's plans. He's was Hokage before I was born. He knows what he's doing." He was relieved. Naruto deserved a friend he could relate to. And from what he had seen, so did Gaara. Chapter 7:1-6 Outsiders. "You mentioned in a report to me that your son is unbalanced." Irika stood with his hands behind his back, knees locked, eyes straight ahead, trying his best not to show his total disdain for the Kazekage. The man was bitter, uncaring, ignorant, and altogether an unfit leader in his opinion. It was because of this man that the Sand was a hostile village. As far as Irika was concerned, the reason Sabaka no Gaara was unbalanced was solely because of his father. "Yes," the Kazekage said slowly in response. "It has become clear to me that Gaara is unfit to handle the Shikaku. He is a threat to my people." "You don't care about your people," Irika thought savagely, having to bite the inside of his lip to keep from glaring at the man. He might not have been Irika's commander, but he was still a Kage, and that awarded him a certain amount of respect. Or, at least, it would not be a good idea to fall out of one's favor. Irika doubted there was anyone who wasn't out of this man's favor. "I have noticed that your people hold young Gaara with a certain amount of fear. Perhaps this is the reason Gaara is unbalanced, as you say? Surely such open negativity would have an effect on a child." It was clear the Kazekage couldn't care less about Sandame's opinion. Perhaps. Nevertheless, what's done is done, and Gaara is now unfit to serve as a ninja. Something must be done with him before he does irrevocable harm. Iruka knew what that meant. He wanted Gaara dead. Assassinations happened to be quite commonplace in the village hidden in the sand, although no one dared to call them that. The Kazekage was clearly a dictator, at least as far as Iruka was concerned. He led his village with no thought to the people, but only for himself. Iruka had seen the man on numerous occasions, and every time he did, his opinion became less and less positive. Now, after seeing the depth of Gaara's madness firsthand, a madness brought on by this man, Iruka was sure of it. It was only the knowledge that this was an ally coupled with the certainty that he, a mere chunin, would stand no chance at doing anything but dying that kept his body from rebelling against his mind. The more he thought about it, the more he wanted to send his fist through the Kazekage's teeth. He turned, about to leave despite the fact that Sandame had requested his presence, when he saw the blonde-haired man, Yashimaru, stride inside. "Kazekage-sama," he said as he approached the desk, bowing deeply. "What is it, Yashimara? This is a private meeting." "I know, Kazekage-sama, and I hope that you will forgive my rudeness, but I have just witnessed something that I thought you would like to hear about." The Kazekage raised an eyebrow. "What?" "It's Gaara-sama. I just went to his chambers to check on him. The Uzumaki child is with him." "Yes, and that is the only explanation possible for this development. I've never seen it before, and while it may be a common occurrence throughout the village for Gaara-sama, it is a phenomenon." Slight interest lit in the man's dark eyes. "A phenomenon?" "Yes, Kazekage-sama," he was laughing. The Kazekage's eyebrows rose. "What? Gaara? He's never laughed, not once. What happened?" Yashimaru shrugged. "I don't know, Kazekage-sama. He and Naruto were sitting at Gaara-sama's writing desk laughing. Just laughing. He actually seemed to be enjoying himself. He seemed human." Iruka closed his eyes. "He is human, you dolts just don't see it. What is the reason for this cursed prejudice? Do they honestly believe Jinchuriki are what, aliens? Animals?" Still, Iruka's mood lightened almost instantly. Naruto had made him laugh, somehow. That was a good sign. He glanced down and saw Sandame smiling. This was precisely what he had been hoping for. Sandame murmured, raising an eyebrow. "It seems as though I was right, Kazekage, and you told me it was a pointless endeavor." The Kazekage glared at Sandame, clearly annoyed. "Fine, Hokage, so it seems you were correct. Gaara seems to have taken a liking to this Uzumaki boy. It still means little." It was clear Sandame didn't believe this. Iruka didn't either. Perhaps it means little, but perhaps it means a great deal. After all, records show that former Jinchuriki were quite violent, but it was hypothesized that this violence was born from their being outcasts alone, forced to fend for themselves. Perhaps having someone he can relate to will stop this tendency from arising in Gaara. "The tendency for violence has already begun, Hokage," the Kazekage said with a scowl. "And are you saying then that it cannot be reversed? Surely an intelligent man such as yourself cannot believe such a thing. Else why would we have prisons?" The Kazekage's scowl deepened. "Fine, Hokage. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Let it be known, however, that it is my opinion that nothing will keep Gaara from losing control of the Shikaku." Sandame shrugged. "Very well. It is my opinion that yours is wrong. We can do naught but wait and see as of this point, can we?" The Kazekage grunted. "Yashimaru, keep an eye on them." "As you wish, Kazekage-sama," Yashimaru said, bowing again. He turned toward the door, reached out for the knob, and stepped back when it opened. Iruka watched as Yuhi Kurenai stepped into the room, leading a paler than usual Hyuga Hinata inside with a hand on her shoulder. "Hokage-sama," Kurenai said. "Hinata's hurt herself. I'd have found one of the others, but we were closest to here and the sand in the air is causing a problem. I can't clean out the wound, and I have no medical supplies with me." Sandame raised an eyebrow. "Nothing at all?" "No. I apologize for my thoughtlessness, Hokage-sama, but I brought nothing with me." Sandame frowned. Yashimaru knelt before the girl and reached out for her arm. "Let me see the wound, young one," he said, and Hinata removed her hand from the bleeding, dirty gash on her other arm. "This sand will have to be cleaned out immediately. I've some supplies in Gaara-sama's room. What is your name, young one?" Hinata licked her lips nervously. Hinata. "Come with me, Hinata. We'll get that cut fixed up." "Iruka," Sandame said. "Go with them, would you?" Iruka nodded. "Fine." He bowed and left, giving Kurenai a slight nod as he followed Yashimaru and Hinata out into the hall. Yashimaru glanced at Iruka with a faint smile. "So how bad is it?" Iruka asked, frowning worriedly at Hinata, who was wincing as she held her arm again. "It's quite dirty, and will easily become infected if left unchecked. However, removing the sand will be a simple matter. There is no need to worry. How will you do it? Yashimaru chuckled. I won't. Not only would conventional methods of cleaning flesh wounds, such as those I know, be quite painful for a child as frail as this girl, but it will not be all that efficient considering just how much sand has been allowed to enter it. If I were to trust my own ability, there would be no guaranteeing that infection will be prevented. So what will you do? Gaara-sama. Pardon? He can extract the sand. I've taught him how, and I can say with confidence that he is quite good at it. If we allow Gaara-sama to do the cleaning, the chances of infection will be small enough to be disregarded. Really? Yes. Iruka frowned. Well, it's worth a shot. You're certain he can do it? Of course. Iruka nodded and turned his attention to Hinata. That looks like quite the cut, Hinata. What happened? Pale gray eyes turned up to look at him. I was just walking with Kurenai-sensei, and then I tripped. On a rock I cut my arm on another rock. Well, we'll get it fixed right up. I'm surprised at Kurenai, she should have had first aid with her, she's usually so diligent about details like that. It's a shame we don't have any mednines with us, nobody with even an inkling of knowledge on medical jutsus is available. You've no one here, Yashimaru? No, the blonde man said. Medical jutsus are very, very difficult. The only one I can think of would never assist an outsider. Don't fret though, Iruka? Iruka nodded. Yes. Don't fret, Iruka. Gaara-sama will do well. Gaara had no idea what a card castle was, but Naruto said he spent a lot of time building them, so he had gone along with it. The idea was surprisingly simple. Take small, rectangular slips of plastic-coated paper. Naruto had snorted laughter when Gaara had asked what cards were until he'd realized it was a serious question, and used them to build something. Naruto's chosen structure was a pyramid, and that was what he taught Gaara. You take 2 of them, Naruto had said, and set them up like this. He set the 2 cards on Gaara's desk, leaning them against each other so that they made an inverted V. Now you take 2 more and set them up right next to the other ones. He did so, making an M. Then you just keep making M like that. After you built up the first level, you take more cards and make a roof. He placed cards horizontally over the small triangular shapes which reminded Gaara of sharp teeth, then started the process over on top. Gaara watched for a while, then his gaze eventually moved to the other boy's face. Naruto had an expression of intense concentration on his face, an expression Gaara had seen on other children before when they played outside. Gaara wondered if that expression meant the activity was fun. Naruto made the second level of his pyramid, and had just started on the third when the entire thing collapsed. Naruto froze, a card in each hand, staring at the pile of cards as if they had insulted him. Stupid cards, stay. You're supposed to stay. He turned his embarrassed face to Gaara. Well, that ain't supposed to happen, but it does a lot. One time I made on that was almost as tall as I was for it fell down, it sucked. They just went poof. He blew on the cards and laughed when they flew all about his head. Hey Gaara, check it out. I'm a giant. He swept his arm across the desk and sent the cards flying onto the floor. Gyark. This village has been cast to the wind. Fear me, for I am Naruto the Great. Naruto burst into a fit of laughter. Gaara stared wonderingly at the blonde for a while, then looked at the cards. He scratched his cheek, a thoughtful expression on his face, and lifted his hand in front of him. He summoned sand, formed it into the shape of a gauntlet fist, and positioned the fist above the fallen cards. Quake in fear, yon infidels, for ye are cast down beneath the iron fist of the earth god. The fist fell onto the cards. Naruto howled, falling off his chair and rolling on the floor. That was great. Awesome, Gaara, full on awesome. It was in a book Yashimaru gave to me. Naruto continued to laugh hysterically, and as he watched, Gaara felt a strange feeling overtake him. He had never before felt the urge to laugh, as he had never seen or heard anything humorous. He was as reclusive as any person could ever be, and so didn't understand what was happening. Gaara had made 3 levels on a card pyramid of his own and was partway through the 4th when his door opened and Yashimaru came in. Naruto spun around on the stool he'd been sitting on and waved. Hey, Iruka-sensei. What ya doing here? Gaara turned and saw the man with the scar across his nose he'd seen earlier in the day. Gaara and Naruto both noticed the girl at the same time. Hiya, Hinata, Naruto said amiably, grinning. What's up? Hi Naruto-kun, the girl said in a slight voice that Gaara could barely hear. Yashimaru strode across the room toward the closet. As he opened it and began rummaging through the things inside, he said, Gaara-sama, do you remember what I taught you about cleaning wounds? Gaara nodded. Yes, Yashimaru. Good, because this girl here needs a gash cleaned out. Yashimaru stood up and placed a small first aid kit on the desk. Your ability will make this much easier. Gaara nodded again. He hopped off his stool and approached the girl, who looked at him nervously. She attempted a smile of greeting, but it didn't stay on her face long. Hey, Hinata! Naruto called excitedly, coming up to her and grinning again. This Gaara. He's really cool. Gaara, this Hinata. She's in my class. Hello, Gaara said, attempting a smile of his own. Hi, Hinata replied, clearly flustered but not wanting to be rude. Is this going to hurt? Gaara shrugged. I don't know. Don't worry, Yashimaru said. He's practiced this technique on me and it's mostly painless. You'll be able to handle it. Hinata glanced back at the man called Iruka, then at Naruto, then back to Gaara. She showed him the gash on her arm, sand covered and had seeped into the cut, and Gaara knew from his studying that it would become infected soon if something wasn't done. He held out a hand just above the cut and reached out to the sand. All eyes were on him as he worked, but he didn't notice. He was focused on the sand. He could feel it, deep in the girl's arm, as it slowly began to rise. His senses were always heightened when he concentrated like this, and though the wound wasn't bleeding much, the coppery smell of blood filled his nose and almost made him gag. It was almost too much. He hated the smell of blood. In the span of a minute the sand was gone. Every bit of it had been extracted and now coated Gaara's hand. He looked at Hinata and attempted another smile. It's clean. Hinata stared at her arm for a long moment before turning her eyes back to him. It barely hurt at all. Thank you? The slight smile on Gaara's face widened the smallest bit. You're welcome, Hinata. Good work, Gaara-sama, Yashimaru said. Now come here, Hinata, so we can finish things up. Hinata walked over to the desk and sat on the stool where Gaara had been. She looked at Gaara's pyramid and was careful not to bump it as she held out her arm to Yashimaru. He finished cleaning the cut with items from the first aid kit, wiped it clear with a small cloth, then wrapped it tightly with a bandage. His work finished, Yashimaru grinned. There we have it. You'll be fine now. That was impressive. Gaara turned and saw that Iruka was looking at him. Huh! Your technique, Gaara-san. It was most impressive. Quite useful. Iruka was smiling. Yeah, that was cool. Naruto agreed, slapping Gaara on the shoulder. I wish I could do that. None of that peroxide crap or nothing. Gaara didn't realize that the small smile on his face had spread into a full grin. He had never been praised before, except by Yashimaru. It was nearly too much for his mind to process. He had heard the people of his village talk badly about the outsiders quite often, at least until they realized he was there. Then they would talk badly about him, about how they were weak and stupid. This day, he had met 3 outsiders, and not one of them had run away. Instead, they talked to him. They were polite, like how Yashimaru had taught him to be. He'd been praised, thanked, and had learned how to laugh all in one day, because of weak and stupid outsiders. Gaara thought that, if that was what being weak and stupid meant, then it wasn't a bad thing. He decided that the villagers talked badly about people from other villages for the same reason that they talked badly about him. They were ignorant, just like Yashimaru said. Chapter 8:1-7 Mission postponed. Kazekage-sama, about my mission. The dark, brooding Kazekage took a long draw from his pipe and glared at his subordinate. What, Yashimaru? Are you backing down? Yashimaru sighed, running a hand through his hair. No, not in so many words, Kazekage-sama, it's just that the opportunity has been lost. There's no way I can succeed at this rate. Why? Are you so weak that you cannot handle such a simple? Kazekage-sama, forgive my rudeness, but you don't understand. We cannot move forward with the plan now. The Hokage is staying much longer than usual because of the children. He'll be here for at least another week. More importantly, Gaara has obviously taken a liking to this Uzumaki boy. If I were to try killing him now, that boy would suspect something. Not only that, but the boy's instructor, Iruka, he doesn't hold you in high regard, Kazekage-sama. He may suspect your hand. The leader of the sand sighed in irritation. Perhaps you've a point. The Hokage would suspect something as well, no doubt. So what are you suggesting? That we hold off until they leave? Yes. That would be best. Our alliance with the Hidden Leaf is rickety at best, and this mission would likely snap it. That is hardly my concern. I had planned on breaking off this useless alliance rather soon. Be that as it may, Kazekage-sama, we currently do not have the resources to fend them off. If Gaara were assassinated while the Leaf are here, they would become hostile. The Hokage holds the Leaf's Jinchuriki with a rather obvious degree of affection. If he were to decide to attack, in an act of retribution, perhaps we wouldn't stand a chance. The Leaf's ranks are far larger than our own. We won't be able to fend them off for years. Once our current genin are experienced enough, we will be able to defeat them, but now? Impossible. The Hokage isn't so foolish as to do such a thing, Yashimaru. He may be affectionate toward Uzumaki, that I will not refute, but he is a smart man, that much I must give him. He wouldn't attack us out of vengeance. Perhaps not, but we still stand to gain more by remaining on civil terms with them for now. We are benefiting greatly from trading with them, and losing those resources now would needlessly cripple us. I suppose you have a point. But you realize I do not appreciate keeping him around any longer than is necessary. He is a threat, and must be eliminated. That may be so, but at the moment the Uzumaki boy is holding Gaara's homicidal tendencies back. With any amount of luck, he will remain docile until the Leafnin leave and we will be able to neutralize the threat. I don't deal in luck, Yashimaru. Nor do I, but from what I have seen thus far, Gaara is like a completely different being. The Shikaku has not taken hold of him since he has met Uzumaki. Which amounts to 5 hours. Hardly a noteworthy span of docility. True, quite true. But it's still a good sign. Fine. You've made your point, Yashimaru. Your mission will be postponed until the Hokage leaves. But I expect you to carry it out in all swiftness once that happens. No more excuses? Of course not. The Kazekage smirked slightly as he shook his head. Oh, I'm certain you'll come up with something. That boy has been alive far longer than I would have liked, but you always find a way to keep him alive. I'm beginning to suspect you actually care for him. I could not. That beast killed my sister. Indeed, well, prove your words by completing your mission at the very first opportunity. Else I will find someone more competent for the job. I gave this duty to you because you have a personal grudge to consider, but should you prove inadequate? Yashimaru hurriedly bowed. I will prove my worth, Kazekage-sama. As you say, the first available opportunity. The Kazekage waved a hand. Dismissed, Yashimaru. Iruka sat down in the insultingly small room where Sandaime would be staying. The elderly ninja was sitting in the only other chair, across the small wooden table from where Iruka sat. Hokage-sama? You wish to speak with me? Sandaime nodded. Yes, Iruka. You saw Naruto and Gaara earlier today, did you not? Yes. Well? How are they getting along? From what I've seen, Hokage-sama, Gaara has had even less experience with people than Naruto, far less. He's obviously had no one treat him even civilly. You know how the children of our village will at least speak to Naruto out of politeness every once in a while. Well, here, from what I can surmise, that isn't the case. Gaara is treated like a monster from every front. Except that man, Yashimaru. He, at least, treats Gaara as if he is human. I'm not entirely certain how sincere it is, to tell the truth, but at least he puts up a front. He and Naruto are getting along splendidly, though. And it seems that he's taken a liking to Hinata as well. Not surprising, I suppose? Hinata is almost impossible to dislike, unlike the rest of her clan. Sandaime chuckled. Yes, well, there are always exceptions. How is Hinata, by the way? Fine. Her wound has been attended to. Gaara has the ability to summon sand to himself, no doubt from the Shikaku. He was able to clean out Hinata's gash with hardly any effort at all. It's very impressive. I don't understand why he's so hated. He has quite a lot of talent. Surely a village such as this would respect talent. Certainly. But even a talented dog is useless to a cruel master such as the Kazekage without a strong enough leash, something he obviously lacks. He doesn't see his son as an asset because Gaara evidently does not respond well to force. He rebels, and quite strongly. This might be because the Shikaku, according to every account I've read, hates being subjugated. Gaara seems to be a quiet boy, Iruka noted. Perhaps, but it is in times of stress that a Jinchuriki will take on the aspects of the bijou he carries. The barriers between the demon and the holder are shaky when the holder is frightened or angry. I've done quite a lot of research on the subject, and every source agrees on this. So Gaara can hold the Shikaku back when in a peaceable mood, but if someone pushes him too far, something that happens quite often, evidently, the bijou pushes forward and lashes out. Because of this, he's considered a threat. Sandaime nodded. Naruto would doubtlessly have ended up the same way if our people were as openly hostile as the folk here. Iruka frowned. Naruto? I can't see him lashing out at anyone from our village. Nor can I, but remember that the Kyuubi is the strongest of the 9. It's as proud as any creature can be. Given a chance, I'm certain it would love to extract vengeance. So why has it not? Our people aren't as hostile, but they still are. I don't know who sealed the Shikaku within Gaara, but I'm inclined to believe that the seal itself is probably much weaker than the fourths. Yondaime certainly was a prodigy, Iruka murmured. You're probably right. Only a handful of ninja in history could rival him. I've seen the seal. It's very complex. Indeed. Sandaime stood up and began to pace. But you say Gaara and Naruto are getting along. That is certainly a good sign. And if you're right about Hinata, it is even better. This is what you were hoping for, right? Iruka asked, raising an eyebrow. So what now? Things are going as planned, but what happens next? Sandaime chuckled. I have an idea, but I'd like to wait a bit before saying anything. It will either be exceedingly easy or nearly impossible given that we are dealing with the Kazekage. I'm inclined to think it will be the latter. Just keep an eye on them for now. Make sure things continue as they are. And watch that Yashimara, he works directly for the Kazekage, there's no telling with him. I don't like to speak ill of allies, but this alliance is hanging by a thread. The Kazekage is not a trustworthy man. I've known that for quite some time, Hokage-sama, Irika said. I've never trusted him. Personally, I can't bring myself to do it. He just isn't a fit leader. Yes, well, perhaps not, but he is the Sands leader. So watch what you say, and how you act. We don't need to get any more alienated from him by showing hostility. As much as I understand your thoughts on him, it will be necessary to be careful around him. Of course, Irika said, nodding. I understand, Hokage-sama. Don't worry. Sandaime nodded as well. Good. That is all for now, Irika. Update me on the situation if anything important happens. You are dismissed, Irika. Irika bowed and turned on his heel. Thank you, Hokage-sama. It was dark outside, and Naruto had given up on making a card pyramid. Each time he got even reasonably far, it fell, and so he had decided to simply watch Gaara. The red-haired boy had an extremely steady hand, one that had allowed him to make a pyramid that was by this point at least 2 heads taller than himself. He had started using sand to boost himself up so that he could reach the top. The base was huge, spanning the entire width of the desk, and it amazed Naruto that his new friend had learned so quickly. Hinata was sitting on the floor, watching as the pyramid continued to grow. She looked at Naruto with an amazed expression on her face. It looks so pretty, she said, and Naruto had to agree. It was impressive, and the multitude of diamond shapes that could be seen within the construction were mesmerizing. Naruto was more interested by the sand Gaara was sitting on, though. It seemed as solid as rock, but when he had tried touching it, it caved under his fingers and set itself back into position when he moved his hand back. He probably manipulates the sand with his chakra, Hinata murmured softly, as if she was talking more to herself than to Naruto, when he did this. But he's our age, how could he have such precise control already? Naruto looked up at Gaara. He waited until the boy's hands were clear of the pyramid after setting another 2 cards onto it before asking, Hey Gaara, how do you do all this stuff with sand? Is it ninjutsu or something? Gaara looked down and frowned thoughtfully. I don't know. I just do it. Yashimara says it's my special power, but I don't know how it works. It's like moving my arms. I just think, and the sand moves. Naruto's eyebrows rose and he looked back at Hinata, who shrugged. I don't know how that's possible, Hinata said. Maybe a bloodline limit? One that's awakened at birth? There are bloodline limits that read like that? Naruto asked. Yes, they're rare though. Usually it takes time or training. But there are some that exist in a newborn, and grow with the user. I guess that could be what's going on here. A technique like this could definitely explain why Gaara-san's father is Kazekage. Father can't do it, Gaara said, looking at Hinata with his strangely intense light green eyes. Only I can. Yashimara says only 2 people have had this special power before, and they weren't part of my family. Really? But how could that be? Gaara shrugged, turning back to his pyramid. I've tried to find out, he said in a soft voice, but all that I know is that people call my power Shikaku. I don't know what it means, or why it's called that. Shikaku, Hinata whispered. That's familiar, but I don't know where I've heard it before, Naruto-kun. Do you know? No clue. Sounds cool though. Shikaku, heh. Awesome. Naruto wondered if Gaara's special power, this Shikaku, was the reason why everyone in his village seemed to hate him. Were they all jealous of it? Naruto had to admit he was. He had wondered from the beginning if such a technique could be learned, but if Hinata was right, and it was some sort of bloodline limit, then it couldn't. Was that why? No, they were scared of it. They hated Gaara because they feared him. Naruto had heard from Irika that everybody he had talked to thus far, save for Yashimaru, had refused to talk to him once he'd mentioned Gaara's name. They'd all been scared or angry, or a combination of both. The people who were scared were usually younger folk, while the angry ones were older. That made sense. It was the same for Naruto. People his own age were more likely to be frightened of him than adults. The adults were the ones who spit at him and called him useless and disgraceful. The more Naruto learned about Sabaka no Gaara, the madder he got at the village hidden in the sand. Thinking of it now, a frown stretched on his face and his eyes narrowed. Naruto-kun? He looked over at Hinata. Huh? What? Sorry, I was thinking about something. The young Hyuga looked worried. What? You looked upset. Huh? I did. Oh, nothing. Nothing. I'm just tired, I guess. It's kinda late. He looked up at Gaara again. And somebody's better than me at this even though he just learned how. That's not fair, Gaara. I've been making these for years. Gaara looked down. Your hands shake when you do it. That's why yours fall down. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Well, sure. I know that. But I can't stop them from shaking. And I don't get how yours don't shake. It just ain't fair. You shouldn't be so much better than me. A smile grew on Gaara's face. Naruto gave up and smiled as well. Fine, be better than me. I'll find something that'll stump you, though. You just wait. I got lots of stuff with me. The smile didn't leave when Gaara turned his attention back to his pyramid. Naruto stood up and walked over to his pack, sat down again and began to dig through it, mumbling to himself as he did. Gaara placed the final 2 cards on the very top of his pyramid, shifted the sand under him so that he was farther away from it, and studied his work. He let the sand dissolve, dropping to the ground, and turned to Naruto. You know how to play tic-tac-toe? Naruto asked, glancing up. I've never heard of it, Gaara said. Naruto grinned, pulling out a pad of paper and a pen. Cool. I love this game, but nobody ever wants to play with me. Naruto placed the pad of paper on the floor and drew a square grid with the pen. Okay, so there are X's and O's. Chapter 9:1-8 What is pain? It was dark as pitch outside when Yashimaru stepped into the room. Hinata and Gaara glanced up at him and greeted him, each in their own quiet way, but Naruto was too occupied with the sheet of paper in front of him to even notice the man. He chewed vigorously on the end of his pen as his brow furrowed in concentration. He had an expression on his face that would have made Iruka gape. He was focused. Finally, hesitantly, as though he were committing a country to an irrevocable decision that would change the fate of all, he took the pen out of his mouth and brought it down, ever so slowly, to the paper. He marked a large X in one of the squares. Gaara glanced at the paper, took the pen when it was offered, and nonchalantly swooped an O into another of the squares. He glanced up at the blonde-haired boy, shrugged that particular shrug of his, and blinked. I win. Naruto stared at the paper like it had just grown eyes. How did I miss that? No way. You how do you do that? This isn't fair. Gaara looked at him, his bright green eyes staring with complete neutrality. It was a creepy expression, one that made Naruto somewhat nervous, but one that he understood. Gaara was probably still in a daze. Naruto still couldn't recall his first conversation with his instructor, even though it had only been 4 weeks previous. Naruto had tried to strike up idle chit-chat with his peers so many times that he'd long since forgotten the number, and a few of those peers had talked with him for a while. But there was something special about having someone else initiate the conversation. When Iruka had done that 4 weeks ago, it had shocked young Naruto to his core. And he still had a hard time believing it. Now, he was the one initiating the conversation again, for someone like him, and he thought that he now understood what he himself must have looked like to Iruka. Naruto wasn't one to conduct such deep thoughts. He preferred action to contemplation, and so it was rare that he found himself so philosophical, if that was the right word. But now he was. Sheesh, no fair, Hinata, you wanna play? But she didn't answer. Hinata was sitting with her legs crossed, arms flat against her sides, leaning slightly forward fast asleep. Oh. I guess it's kinda late. Yashimaru, Gaara said, looking up at the young Sannin. Naruto is teaching me a game. Is that so? Yashimaru murmured, glancing over his shoulder at the boy. It sounds like you're enjoying yourself, Gaara-sama. Gaara smiled his small smile and nodded. Yes, Yashimaru. Good. I'm glad to hear it. Naruto frowned, still studying the sheet of paper on the floor. Gaara's good at this, he beat me every time. He reached down and picked up the paper. No fair. No fair. He began waving it around for emphasis, glaring at Yashimaru as if it were his fault. Then, suddenly, he dropped the paper and hissed. Oh. Stupid paper. Examining his finger, Naruto saw a thin sliver of a cut. Grimacing, he popped the finger in his mouth. Dumb paper cut. He mumbled angrily. Yashimaru glanced over. Paper cut? Sorry, Naruto-san. Nothing I can do for that. I can make an ointment to ease the pain, but not until morning. I've no ingredients. Naruto waved dismissively with his other hand. I'm a ninja. I can handle a stupid paper cut. What's a paper cut? Gaara asked. Naruto raised an eyebrow, removing his finger from his mouth. You don't know what a paper cut is, Gaara? The boy shook his head. No. It's a cut from paper. But what causes it? Yashimaru chuckled quietly. Gaara-sama, not everyone has your talent. Most people's skin can be sliced open rather easily. Eh? Naruto asked. What? Gaara-sama's special power to control sand allows him to protect himself, Yashimaru explained. As a result, he has never been injured. It is a subconscious ability, as far as I can ascertain. In other words, it is automatic. Whenever Gaara-sama is in danger, the sand protects him. A shield, if you will. Naruto stared at the man. Whoa, he can do that too? Sheesh. Yashimaru chuckled. Yes, Gaara-sama is quite gifted. That is why he is being taught the way of the shinobi. Whoa, so he can't be wounded then? Awesome! It seemed like the more he learned about Sabaka no Gaara, the cooler he got. What a ninja! Wounds, Gaara murmured thoughtfully, as if tasting the word. He looked over at Naruto's hand, at Hinata's gauze-covered arm, at Yashimaru's bandaged wrist and forehead, from the sand he had jumped in front of to save the girl ball player whose ankle had been broken. Yashimaru, he said, looking up at his caretaker's face. Do wounds hurt? Yashimaru eyed his own wounds. Just a little. They will heal quickly, though. This didn't seem to help the situation any. If anything, Gaara looked even more confused. He frowned. What does pain feel like? I've never been hurt before. I was wondering how it felt. Yashimaru raised an eyebrow, put off by the odd question. Naruto, too, found he had no answer. What did pain feel like? How could you explain it? Any word used to describe pain would have no meaning to someone who had never felt it sting, burn, ache. How should I explain this? Yashimaru said contemplatively. It's unbearable. Like when a person is shot or cut, he becomes very ill at ease and he can't think normally. I can't explain it very well, but simply put, it's not a very good condition to be in. Oh, that worked, Naruto thought. Yashimaru was right, he couldn't explain it very well. But as much as the explanation didn't work, Naruto couldn't come up with anything better. Explaining pain to Gaara was like explaining color to a person born blind. In short, impossible. Unbearable, Gaara repeated. Then do you hate me, Yashimaru? The boy was looking at the bandages on his caretaker's body again. People hurt each other and get hurt during their lifetimes, Yashimaru said with a gentle smile. But it is difficult to hate another. Something was weird about the way Yashimaru had answered Gaara's question, but Naruto couldn't place it. Had Hinata, who was smarter and more observant, been awake, she likely would have caught on to the fact that Yashimaru hadn't actually answered the question at all. But Gaara smiled, his eyes brightening. Thanks, Yashimaru. I think I understand what hurting is, now. The smile left his face almost as quickly as it had appeared. Maybe I'm injured, too, just like everyone else. Gaara put a hand to his chest, over his heart, his expression one of sadness. I always hurt here. I'm not bleeding, but my chest really hurts here. Naruto felt a new flash of anger at this village's people. Yashimaru knelt down to Gaara's level, a solemn expression on his face. Reaching around his back, he pulled a thin knife from his belt. Looking down at his hand, he slowly slid the blade across one finger. Gaara gasped. Flesh wounds bleed, Yashimaru said, and they may seem painful. But as time goes by, the pain eventually disappears. And if you use medicine like I did with Hinata today, the wounds will heal even faster. He mirrored Gaara's action, placing a hand over his heart. But the tricky wounds are the ones in your heart. Those are difficult to heal. Gaara seemed confused. A wound of the heart? Yashimaru nodded. A wound of the heart is different from a flesh wound. Unlike a flesh wound, there are no ointments to heal it, and there are times when they never heal. But there is one thing that can heal a wound of the heart. Yashimaru glanced over at a picture sitting on Gaara's desk, behind his card pyramid. Naruto hadn't noticed it before. He figured the woman in the picture was related to Yashimaru in some way. She looked just like him. It is a troublesome medicine, and you can only receive it from another person. What? Gaara asked excitedly. How can I heal this? The thing that can heal a wound of the heart is love. Love? Gaara repeated. Yes. How can I get that? What should I do to get rid of this pain? Gaara-sama, you have already received it. Naruto had a feeling that this entire conversation was just one confusing sentence after another for Gaara. His face was a constant blank, and every time it seemed like he understood something, Yashimaru said something else to bewilder him. I tried to explain this to you before, but I didn't really know how to say it then. Love is the spirit of devoting yourself to someone important and close to you, Yashimaru continued. It is expressed by caring for and protecting that person. Just like my sister. He looked back at the picture. Naruto took a moment to feel proud of himself for guessing correctly. I believe that my sister always loved you. Gaara-sama, the Shikaku of the sand is a living soul that is usually used for combat purposes. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Living soul? What did that mean? But the sand automatically protects you because of love. I believe the will of your mother is inside the sand. My sister probably wanted to protect you, even after her death. So Yashimaru was Gaara's uncle. Naruto looked at the picture again. That woman was Gaara's mother. So that was why her picture was in Gaara's room. The only picture in Gaara's room. Yashimaru, Gaara said after a long silence, a slight smile returning to his face. Thanks back there for stopping me. My pleasure, Yashimaru replied with a smile of his own. You are a person who is important and close to me, Gaara-sama. Gaara's smile widened for a moment. Then he saw a drop of blood fall from Yashimaru's cut finger. He stepped forward, slowly, as if in a trance, and took hold of his caretaker's hand. Then, As Naruto had done with his paper cut, Gaara put the bleeding finger into his mouth. Yashimaru's eyebrows raised slightly, but he said nothing. Naruto was silent as well. When Gaara asked Yashimaru for ointment, Naruto hadn't known what the boy planned to do. Yashimaru had found some spare ointment in his own chambers, and had given it to Gaara in a paper bag. It was late, very late, but Gaara went outside. Naruto followed him, if only in order to find out what his new friend was planning to do. He was tired, but he still managed to keep up. Of course, Naruto had no idea where they were going, and when Gaara stopped at a house, the blonde boy frowned thoughtfully. He looked at Gaara, then followed him up onto the porch. Gaara knocked on the door several times. When it finally opened, the girl whose ankle had been broken stood there. Naruto understood now what the ointment was for, and he smiled. "Hello," Gaara said with a slight smile. The girl's face was a mixture of fear and anger, but she said nothing. Her eyes were wide, and she was shaking. "I'm sorry about before. It had hurt, right?" Gaara offered the bag to her. "This is ointment, use it if you want." Naruto was almost, not quite, but almost, as shocked as Gaara himself when the girl scowled and shouted, "Go away!" before slamming the door shut. "Monster!" Gaara looked heartbroken. His eyes were wide and fearful, and it looked like he was about to cry. Naruto, however, reacted in an entirely different manner. He had thought they were bad before, but this took the cake. That. It all came to a head. All the things his own village's people had done to him, all the cruel things he had heard about this village. The word monster brought back memories he hadn't known he'd had, of people looking at him with those wide, fearful, angry eyes, those scowling mouths with teeth that looked sharp. And that word echoing through his mind like the cold, harsh laughter of a demon. He couldn't run anymore. This was it. Done. Over. No more. He shot forward, slamming his fists against the door. "Hey! Open the door!" He started kicking it, rage such as he had never felt burning through his body. He continued to shout at the girl behind the door with such venom in his voice that it was virtually unrecognizable. His voice sounded guttural primal like a wild animal. He tried opening the door, but it had been locked. When he couldn't open it even after clawing at it so hard that his fingertips began to bleed, Naruto continued his assault, thrashing at the wood with a complete lack of control. This was too much. This wasn't just hatred, this was as cold as the devil's heart. "Open the door!" Naruto screamed. It finally opened, and a man stood behind the girl, most likely her father. The splinter-ridden obstruction removed, Naruto slammed his white-knuckled fist into the girl's face, sending her reeling backward. "You jerk! What the hell's wrong with you?" He got no answer. The door slammed shut again. Naruto clenched his eyes shut, straining to calm himself. He didn't bother to knock on the door again, they wouldn't answer. He took deep breaths through his nose, trying to make himself stop shaking. When he finally managed to get a hold on himself, Naruto turned and looked at Gaara. The red-haired boy had dropped the bag of ointment, and was now staring at Naruto as if he had grown a third arm. "Come on, Gaara. Let's go back. These guys were useless." Naruto started heading back toward the direction they had came, stuffing his hands, still balled into fists, into the pockets of his pants. Gaara walked with him. "That was nice, Gaara. Really. They're just stupid. Really, really stupid. Just ignore 'em. They ain't worth it. People like that don't mean nothing, anyways. All you gotta think about is guys like Yashimaru. He's cool." Naruto grinned and slung an arm around Gaara's shoulders. "You're a good guy, Gaara. Don't let dumb people like them say you aren't. They don't know nothing, they're the monsters, not you." Naruto kept talking all the way back, and he didn't notice the tears falling from Gaara's light green eyes. He also didn't notice the trembling smile on his lips. "Sorry this chapter took so long. With school starting, I haven't been doing much writing lately. Then, I discovered a new anime series and stopped thinking about Naruto for a while. Now I'm back though, and the next one won't take so long to come." This was a hard chapter to write, as I wanted to make sure I had it right, which meant I had to find the right episode that corresponded to this part of Gaara's past. Since I couldn't remember which one it was, I had to guess. Finally found it though, and after noting down the conversation between Yashimaru and Gaara, I used it as the groundwork for this chapter, changing it a bit to make it fit better. This is one of 3 reasons I started writing this story. The first was the kickball scene. The second was this scene. The third is yet to come, but I think you'll like it. This chapter, though, was the one thing that made me stop thinking and start writing. The image of Naruto going off the deep end and attacking the door wouldn't leave my mind. It was rather cathartic to me, as I absolutely despised the anime's version when Gaara lowers the bag of ointment, and you see his face no. I couldn't leave it alone. Oh, but he hurt her. Of course she's gonna be mad at him. Not good enough. I hate that girl. Chapter 10:19 Plans for Transference. The next morning, Naruto woke up late. He was normally an early riser, but he'd stayed up too long. By the time he and Gaara had made it back from the harass the neighbors incident, it had been close to 1 in the morning. Naruto had tried to stay up until Gaara went to sleep, but couldn't, obviously, since Gaara never slept. He had made it to 3:30, then had fallen onto the floor. When he woke, he felt groggy. His head hurt from the sunlight shining in his eyes, his hands hurt from the stupid door, the wounds he had suffered were all but gone, but there was still a strong ache, and his back hurt from sleeping on the ground. He wanted nothing more than to curl up into a ball and go back to sleep, but he couldn't find a comfortable position. The night before, it had seemed the most comfortable bed ever, not anymore. He gave up and struggled to a sitting position. Yashimaru was in the room, writing on a notepad. "Naruto-san," he said with a slight smile. "Good. Your Hokage is waiting for you. Hinata-san has left already." Looking around, he saw that Hinata, indeed, wasn't in the room. Gaara was gone too. He voiced his discovery. "Gaara-sama is with his tutor. I suggest you hurry. Hinata-san has been gone to near an hour." "An hour?" Naruto cried, leaping to his feet. "Oh crap!" He shot out of the room, just knowing that he'd be in for it now. Old Man Hokage had found out about what he had done and was going to tear him apart for it. Not only that, but now he was an hour late, and that was going to make everything 10 times worse. "Oh crud, what's he gonna do?" he thought feverishly as he ran full tilt through the halls. "What's Irika-sensei gonna make me do this time? Crap, crap, crap. He's gonna make me walk back home by myself or something. Or blindfolded. Or backwards. Or carrying something on my head." None of these ideas had actually passed through Irika's mind, of course, but that really didn't matter. The more scenarios Naruto thought up, the more fun they sounded, and he would probably end up trying quite a few of them on his own. It was more than likely he would end up doing several at once, walking backwards on his hands with a blindfold over his eyes and a bowl of silverware balanced on his feet. This would only last for about 7 seconds, when he would bump into somebody and end up sprawled on the ground with cutlery all over the place. By the time Naruto stopped to take a breath, he had ceased being frightened by the punishment he was sure he would receive and was hoping for it. It was then that he realized he had no idea where he was supposed to go. "It's been nearly 2 hours," Sanday murmured. "Where is that boy?" Irika, who knew Naruto better than anyone else, chuckled. "He's probably lost. Chances are he didn't bother asking where to meet us." Sanday sighed heavily and nodded. "You're probably right. Go and find him, would you, Irika? I'm not in a hurry, but 2 hours is ridiculous. And make sure he hasn't broken anything." Irika nodded, bowed, and left the room. As he walked, he wondered about what he'd heard early that morning. Someone from the village had stormed into the Kazekage's chamber, interrupting his meeting with Sandaime, yelling his head off about how the beast had showed up at his home and how one of the leaf brats had been with him. They had assaulted his daughter, he claimed, and was demanding retribution. The Kazekage had waved it off as a small concern, but had said he would look into it. When Gaara has brought in and asked about it, though, the red-haired boy had denied being anywhere in the village past nightfall. He had played tic-tac-toe, a new game of which he was fond, with Naruto and Hinata until they had fallen asleep. He had then settled down to read. Irika had asked Yashimaru what had happened, and Gaara had told him a different story. Gaara had gone to the girl's house to give her ointment for the leg he had wounded, and Naruto had gone with him. The girl had refused the ointment, and had shut the door in his face, calling him a monster. Naruto had then, in a fit of anger, punched the girl in the face. Irika had reported this to Sandaime. The elderly ninja had done something very odd, considering one of his people had, indeed, assaulted someone. He had laughed. All things considered, it's to be expected. Naruto himself has been called a monster for years. That word evidently struck a chord with him. Irika was sure that was the case. It made perfect sense. So Gaara lied, probably to keep Naruto from getting in trouble. Yashimaru said he was crying but happy when they came back. He's probably never had anyone defend him before. Irika smiled. He found himself proud of Naruto rather than upset. He'd seen the girl who'd been assaulted, and she looked like a belligerent type. As far as the young Chunin was concerned, she deserved it. Besides, it was just a black eye. A villager from a hidden village of such pride and power as the Sand should be able to handle a black eye. He laughed. So, they were the strongest of all the hidden villages until someone from another village decided to deck them. Then they went crying to the Kazekage for retaliation. For once, Irika agreed with the man. It wasn't worth worrying over. Crap, crap, crap. Where the heck do I go? Irika looked up and saw Naruto walking around, hands in his pockets, looking at each door he passed with an annoyed expression on his face. "Ah, there you are," Irika said, and Naruto jumped. "Hokage-sama is waiting for you, Naruto, come on. We should hurry." Naruto heaved a sigh of relief and followed his instructor. You must have been up late, Iruka said, to have slept in so much. It's not like you. I tried to stay up till Gaara went to bed, but he never did. That's because Gaara doesn't sleep, Iruka said. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Huh. That's what I've heard anyway. It's some sort of ability he has, I guess. He never runs out of energy, or at least, never needs to sleep in order to regain it. Iruka knew what it was that kept Gaara awake, of course, he just couldn't tell Naruto about the demon. Sandaime had forbidden it, but he hadn't planned on doing it anyway. Geez! Naruto cried. He can do all that cool stuff with sand and he doesn't have to sleep. This is just crazy. Lucky. Naruto huffed and crossed his arms as he walked. Iruka chuckled. Everything about Gaara that made his village hate him, Naruto was jealous of. Everything that made Gaara a monster in the sand's eyes made him a hero in Naruto's. And from what Iruka had seen, Gaara was a promising future ninja, not a threat. Unbalanced? Now there was irony. When a group of psychopaths calls you insane, does it really count? Iruka chuckled again. Ah, Naruto, there you are. Scratching his head, Naruto chuckled as he sat down. Sorry about that. Naruto glanced around and saw Hinata sitting beside him. He smiled slightly. Hiya. Hello, Naruto-kun. Now, Sandaime said, leaning his elbows on the desk he sat behind, I'm sure you're both wondering why I wanted to see you. Naruto had an idea. Well, you see, I want to find out the social health, if you will, of young Gaara. I hear from the Kazekage that he is bordering on insane, and needs to be contained in order to keep the rest of the village safe. Naruto snorted. Sandaime chuckled. Since the two of you spent last night with him, I wanted to see what you think. Naruto, Hinata, is Gaara insane? No! Naruto snapped immediately. Hinata shook her head. He was nice. I see, Sandaime murmured. Why do you think the Kazekage would say such a thing then? 'Cause he's a moron. I don't know, Hokage-sama. A moron, you say? Naruto nodded. He's probably like the rest of those jerks. They call Gaara a monster and run away from him and ignore him, then they expect him to be nice to him. Naruto crossed his arms, a frown plastered on his face. Stupid. Sandaime frowned thoughtfully. I see. Hinata? Do you have anything to add? The dark-haired girl bit her lip nervously. Well, it seems a lot like what our villagers do to Naruto-kun. Naruto nodded. Yeah. Sandaime rubbed his chin. I thought so. Iruka crossed his arms and cleared his throat. I find it highly unlikely that Gaara is insane, and if he is being driven towards it, it's because of the village. They're one step away from asking him to go nuts. They're openly hostile and their leader does nothing to curb it. Upon hearing that, Naruto wondered if his own village would be just like this one. If not for Sandaime, he didn't think so, but all the same, he felt a new appreciation for the old man. I had figured on this, Sandaime said. I always take what the Kazekage tells me with a grain of salt. He tends to twist things in his favor when it comes to giving information. It isn't fair to call someone crazy simply because he retaliates when someone else hurts him. But it seems that is precisely what he has done. I've seen Gaara as well, and I see no reason to deem him fit to confinement. I asked the Kazekage about this, and he told me the brat's just acting, but somehow, I doubt that. It can't be healthy for Gaara-san if his own father acts the same way as the rest of the village. I agree, Hinata. I have noticed there are distinct parallels between this situation and our own Naruto. You agreed that Gaara has gone through much the same as you, yourself, have? Yeah, but it's worse. These guys just flat out mean. Least back home some people are nice. Sandaime frowned. Well, as you know, I'm trying to stop the hostility of the villagers back home, but people are not easily changed. Family is an important aspect of our people's lives, and the fact that you are an orphan does not sit easily with them. I've tried convincing them that it is simple superstition, but don't worry about it. They're just dumb. I know. It seemed exceedingly stupid to Naruto that people would hate him just because he had no parents, but it seemed that was the case. He was, after all, the only one in the village who didn't belong to some sort of clan besides Iruka, but Iruka was a ninja. A teacher. That earned him respect. That was why Naruto wanted to be a ninja too. He would prove to the other villagers of his home that he was worth something. But he wouldn't stop at Chunin like Iruka had. He would go on until he became the next Hokage. Then everyone would see that orphans weren't useless, that it wasn't bad luck to be an orphan or to be associated with one. Well, I've thought about this for quite some time, Sandaime continued, interrupting Naruto's thoughts, and I think it might work. You both like Gaara, do you not? Sure, Naruto said with a grin. He's awesome. Gaara-san is very nice, Hinata added, nodding. Well, then this may work out. Iruka raised an eyebrow. What are you concocting, Hokage-sama? Sandaime chuckled. Well, as I've said before, it's good for aspiring ninja to see the other hidden villages, so why don't we have Gaara come back to Konoha with us when we leave? I think it would help him gain a firmer grasp on the world around him. Naruto's eyes widened. You mean it? Certainly. It would likely be a nice vacation for him. If the people of his own village are treating him so badly, what say you two? Would you be willing to show him around, make sure he is comfortable if he does decide to take up on this offer? Oh, heck yeah! Naruto cried excitedly. As sure. Sandaime smiled. I'll talk to the Kazekage about it. You two do what you want for now. Talk to Gaara about it, and see if he'd like to visit our village. You bet. Naruto leapt out of his seat and shot off out of the room, excitement flooding through him. Hinata followed, albeit at a much slower pace. So this was the other half of your plan? Sandaime raised an eyebrow. I have no idea what you're talking about, Iruka. It was just an idea. Iruka smirked. Sure. I'll admit that they seem to have befriended each other rather quickly, but surely this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment idea that popped into your head when Naruto said he liked him. Sandaime chuckled. No, that I will admit. I had figured on them bonding quickly, and it seems that they have. And yes, I had this little visit planned out as well. If my suspicions are correct, they will end up fast friends, and comradeship is very important for a ninja. Iruka frowned. The way you say visit makes me wonder at your motives. Hokage-sama, you aren't planning on just having him stay in Konoha for a week or two, are you? Oh well, if it turns out that Gaara likes life better in Konoha, I'm certainly not averse to extending his stay. Besides, the Kazekage evidently doesn't want him, nor does anyone else here. Iruka smiled again. You want to turn Gaara into one of us? Perhaps. He laughed. Well, you certainly are crafty, aren't you, Hokage-sama? I have no idea what you're talking about. I simply think this will be good for the two of them. Better they bond now as brothers, perhaps, rather than end up at arms against each other later. You know as well as I that if Gaara stays here, and is not killed, he will eventually be used as a weapon against us. True, very true. So this isn't only for Naruto and Gaara, this is a military tactic. You want to take their best potential soldier away from them, defang them, in a sense. I suppose, from a business point of view, you could say it that way. I am, however, more concerned about Gaara's mental health than the strength of our forces. I know our ninja well enough, and while Gaara's gift certainly is welcome, it is not my prime motive. I simply wish for him to find a place where he is welcome, a true home. Iruka raised an eyebrow. All well and good, but while our civilians won't be as bad as the civilians here, they certainly won't accept an outsider so readily as you and I would. And if you're right, and I think you are, about Naruto and Gaara befriending each other, they already seem to be, would they not dislike him even more simply by association? Oh, I'm sure, but unlike my comrade, I will take steps to ensure such behavior is brought to a minimum. Besides, anything would be better than what he is dealing with now. And having someone like Naruto will help him adapt, and also Naruto will have someone to help him deal with his own troubles. It seems like a valid idea. Are you sure it will work out? They've only known each other for a day, after all. I'll have him stay in Konoha on the pretense of a temporary visit, and if it doesn't work out I will simply make it so, and send him back, but I don't think that will happen. You saw them, did you not? Iruka nodded. Yes. They seem to be getting along well. That's enough for now. I'm moving quickly because that is the only way I will get anything done. The Kazekage is a cunning man, and speed is the only weapon currently at my disposal. I see. Well, in that case, by all means. Naruto was certainly excited by the idea. He's usually an amiable person, but lately he's been walking on clouds. Then why stop at the clouds? Sandaime chuckled. Iruka grinned. Indeed. Sandaime took out his pipe and lit it. As he took a long draw, her looked out the only window at the village. Iruka followed his gaze, marveling at the way his leader's mind worked. He was one surprise after another. Had he had everything planned from the beginning? Had he wanted to bring Gaara to Konoha from the start? Iruka figured he had. If things work out the way Hokage-sama thinks, and they probably will, I think I've just found the third member of Naruto's squad. Chapter 11 110, An Equal Trade. He what? Yes, the Kazekage murmured thoughtfully. The Hokage has proposed that Gaara leave with him to visit Konoha, he says. I know what he wants though. He has seen the way Gaara is treated here, and I've made no mistake of the fact that I have no use for him, so he wishes to take him. Yashimara frowned thoughtfully. I see. But we can't allow that, can we? He would be 10 times more dangerous to us in another village. He would lose what loyalty he has to us. The Kazekage shrugged. That is of little concern to me. Konoha is a weak village too wrapped in its own prosperity to garner even a halfway competent ninja. All they have is their numbers. True, those numbers have stayed my hand, but one more will do little to help them. As you yourself said, once our current students join the ranks, we will have the strength to overthrow them. So you intend to give Gaara to them, Kazekage-sama? Perhaps you see, the only way Gaara would be of any danger to us would be if he were to harness the power of the Shikaku effectively, something he will never accomplish on his own. Leaf Neen have no idea what sort of strength the priest of the desert has. They will be unable to teach him. He will be weak. Yes, but if it's so easy to weaken him, why did we not rid ourselves of him this way from the beginning? I had hoped to kill him here because we would be able to extract the Shikaku from him and make the attempt again immediately afterward, but the way things are escalating, I don't know if that will occur so simply. As I said, Konoha is a peaceful village. Gaara will, as the Hokage thinks, be more docile there. There is far less chance of the Shikaku gaining control of him there than here. If we do this, it will end up benefiting us far more than Konoha. When we launch our attack, we will be able to rid ourselves of him. For now, I'll let the Hokage take him and weaken him. So you will do this? The Kazekage nodded. However, I will not cede to the Hokage so easily. This may be a benefit, but I am a businessman, after all. I do not give charity. If Konoha wants Gaara, they'll have to pay. And they'll have to pay handsomely. Yashimaru chuckled. Is that right? Well, Kazekage-sama, and here I thought you were being generous. Me? Hardly, Yashimaru. I am intelligent. Perhaps the Hokage thinks he's pulled a fast one on me, but he has no idea just who he is dealing with. I did not become Kazekage by being generous. So what are you going to ask for in return for him? The Kazekage smirked evilly. The Hokage's students are mostly fools, especially the Kyuubi's vessel. Quite a shame. Uzumaki Naruto is a bumbling fool, and no amount of conditioning will make him useful. Regardless of the demon within him, he is far too loyal to Konoha. And no doubt the Hokage would fight tooth and nail to keep him, but there is one child that has great potential. I intend to unlock. Konoha wants one of mine? Fine, I will take one of theirs. A sound plan, Kazekage-sama. Sound indeed. Not only will we gain a soldier, but we will finally have a solid chance of destroying our greatest threat. Ingenious, Kazekage-sama, simply ingenious. Of course, dismissed Yashimaru. It was the day they would be heading back home, and this time Naruto was even more excited to begin the journey than when he begun the first. Gaara stood beside him, clearly excited himself, albeit to a lesser degree than Naruto. The red-haired, green-eyed boy stared out toward the outskirts of his village, no doubt wondering what life was like outside the walls of his prison. He shifted his shoulders, settling the gourd on his back. Yashimaru had given it to him the day before, and Gaara was still getting used to holding it. It was heavy, filled as it was with chakra-imbued sand, and Gaara's frame was thin. Naruto watched his friend as he waited impatiently for the Kazekage to show up. The man had said he'd had one last order of business to conduct with Sandaime before he left, and so far he hadn't shown up. Naruto was anxious to get home in order to show Gaara around, and even though he'd only been waiting for 15 minutes or so, it felt like an eternity. What is your village like, Naruto? Gaara murmured in his soft, contemplative voice. Eh? Naruto turned to face Gaara and raised an eyebrow. What's it like? Oh well, it's green. Real green. Trees every place, you know? And lots of buildings, like here, but a little more different looking. What about the people? Naruto fidgeted as he tried to come up with a good answer. Well, geez. Well, they aren't as mean as the people here, I'll tell you that much. They're nicer. Polite. But some of them are the same as here, too. But you'll like it, Gaara, trust me. Gaara seemed skeptical, but he smiled that slight smile he had and nodded. Okay. I will. Naruto turned toward the village again, and grinned when he saw Yashimaru and the Kazekage approaching. Finally! Yashimaru honestly wasn't sure why he'd given Gaara the gourd. It was for defensive purposes, after all, and while he put up a pretense of caring for his nephew, he honestly couldn't care less. So why? He didn't know. It had just happened. After Gaara had agreed to visit Konoha, he'd just given it to him. Since you're visiting the forests, sand won't be plentiful and you won't be able to use your gift, he had said. This gourd is a special artifact. It calls back whatever sand is removed from it, so that it always stays full. Gaara had simply nodded, thanked him, and had adjusted it so that it lay easy on his back. It was large, nearly as tall as he was, but he managed. The gourd was surprisingly light considering that it was filled to the brim with sand, and while it was likely still heavy for the boy, it wouldn't be after he had grown a bit. It was never meant to go to him, Yashimaru thought now as he approached the group of Leaf Neen and students at his master's side. He was supposed to die before ever seeing it. Why would I give it to him now? He didn't know about it, so he wouldn't know I would have been hiding something. Why did I give it to him? Yashimaru watched the child eye his father with detached disinterest. He hated Gaara. The beast had stolen his beloved sister from him. He had offered to assassinate him personally. He burned with the thirst for vengeance whenever he looked upon him. He hated Sabaku no Gaara with every fiber of his being. Didn't he? So Hokage. Time to return home, is it? Sandaime raised an eyebrow. Yes, what was this business you wanted to speak with me about? We're behind schedule, and my people wish to return home. The Kazekage nodded, but there was no denying that he really didn't care. Yes, we will do this quickly enough. You see, I have a proposition for you. My son has agreed to visit Konoha and I have every intention of letting him do so if, that is, you do one thing for me. The tall, lanky man's voice was light enough, but it was too fake to fool anyone. Even Naruto, who hardly ever paid attention to such things, understood that the Kazekage wasn't being sincere. Sandaime frowned. I see. And did you have anyone in mind? Well, as you know, I only allow the most highly skilled ninja into my ranks, so it would stand to reason that I would instruct only the most promising students. Only fair that, since you are taking this village's prodigy, that I take yours, the successor to your prestigious Uchiha clan, young Sasuke there. Naruto turned to look at the stone-faced youth as he stepped away from the others and stood at Sandaime's side. There was no telling what was going through his mind. He was like a wall. His black eyes studied the Kazekage with no emotion at all. Sandaime's frown deepened. I see, he repeated. Sasuke? Are you willing to do this? Would you mind staying in this village for a while? Sasuke raised an eyebrow at his leader. First off, it isn't a while, let's drop the joke, huh? This is a permanent change. If I stay here, it's for good. The same with Gaara. Sandaime's frown left his face in surprise. The Kazekage smirked slightly. Is that what you think? Sandaime turned his eyes back to the Kazekage. Fine. Let us cease this pretense, shall we? They deserve that much, at least. A shrug. Fine by me. Me too, Sasuke said, without giving Sandaime a chance to reply. All eyes turned to the young Uchiha, thunderstruck by his immediate reply. Naruto didn't know Sasuke all that well at all, actually, so the fact that he was willing to stay in the Sands village didn't bother him much. But looking at the girls from his class, he saw that most of them were absolutely devastated. They were Sasuke's admirers. Are you sure about this, Sasuke? Sandaime asked. Sasuke crossed his arms. Yes. Let's face facts here, old man, there is nothing in Konoha for me. I stand to gain nothing by staying there. Here I have a chance. How do you figure? Being here a week has shown me that the people here are stronger than we are. I want that strength. This is my chance to gain it, and I will take it. Naruto was struck by how old Sasuke sounded. He'd always known the black-eyed, black-haired boy to be mature beyond his years, but now none of those gathered thought of him as a 9-year-old academy student, not even the Kazekage. He was a soldier. The Kazekage looked down at the boy. You understand your training regimen will be much more strenuous under my command. Good, Sasuke replied. Naruto thought he understood. Sasuke's entire clan had been annihilated just recently, the whole family, gone. His mother, father, aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone. He'd heard whispers that the murderer had been Sasuke's own brother, but no one would say for certain. Naruto wondered if, after having been subjected to such betrayal, he would have much of a desire to remain loyal to Konoha, either. Naruto had been alone from the start. Sasuke had grown up. Normally it had to have been a crippling blow. And here everyone saw the result of that blow. Sasuke would become a Sannin. Naruto glanced at Gaara and a second realization hit him. Gaara would become a Leaf Nin. The idea filled him with excitement, but he kept it inside. This was a serious event. After all, one of his colleagues, familiar or not, had just committed himself to an entirely different home. Such a thing was not done easily, and yet Sasuke had done it immediately. If this is your decision, Sasuke, Sandaime said, I have no place in stopping you. Very well. If you are certain, absolutely certain, that you wish to take this course of action, you have my permission. Sasuke, in a strange gesture, bowed slightly. Thank you, Hokage-sama. The Kazekage turned to Gaara, almost as if on an afterthought. Gaara, are you willing to commit yourself to the Hidden Leaf? Gaara's response, like Sasuke's, was immediate. Yes, father. A nod, and that was it. It is done, Hokage. Sandaime sighed. Very well, Kazekage, bargain struck. They shook hands. There will be various records to be exchanged. I will send them to you shortly. Sandaime nodded. Fine. But we must be going. The Kazekage nodded. Of course. As Sandaime turned, and with him everyone else, Naruto thought he saw Sasuke give him a solemn glance. And although he wasn't entirely sure, he thought he heard him whisper something. Something like, I hope you'll be happy now. Glancing beside him at Gaara's smiling face, Naruto had a feeling he would be. I can't believe it was done so quickly. They did agree to the arrangement on extremely short notice. Sandaime raised an eyebrow at Iruka and Kakashi. Are you honestly surprised? Gaara was reviled 2 steps away from assassination. And Sasuke, well, he's right. He has nothing tying him to our village anymore. This arrangement will work well for both of them. Iruka nodded. Sure. Kakashi, though, didn't agree. Perhaps for Sabaka no Gaara, this will be good, but for Sasuke, no. He will not find fulfillment there. Not under the Kazekage's rule. His heart is fueled with the fire of vengeance, and he will carry it out, I am sure, but he will never be happy. I had never really expected him to be, after what happened, Sandaime said. His entire life revolved around his clan, and he idolized his brother. Itachi's betrayal all but broke his spirit. I tried to help him, but he cannot be reached, even at his young age. He walks his own path. Kakashi sighed, adjusting his headband. A shame Sasuke had promised. So does Gaara, Sandaime said. Do not forget that this worked both ways. We have a new student now. We must focus on him. No doubt he will catch no end of grief from the young women of his class for this. I doubt he needs us adding to it. Iruka chuckled. Yes, that will certainly be an issue, but I think Naruto will help him through it. And let's not forget Hinata. She has taken a liking to both of them. Sandaime rubbed his chin. Your evaluation of your students will be required soon. From the sound of it, you've already gotten an idea of who should be teamed with Naruto. Iruka chuckled again. It bodes well. We'll see what happens when we get back home. A member of the Hyuga clan and 2 Jinchuriki, Kakashi murmured thoughtfully. Quite the squad if it turns out. Hinata may not be powerful now, but the strength in her blood cannot be denied. She has very precise chakra control already, and her body is in great physical condition. She's near the top of the class. Very intelligent, as well. She's gifted, she just doesn't realize it. I think that would have to do with her father. Sandaime nodded. Doubtlessly Hayashi is harsh, very harsh. But it seems she has found a friend in both Naruto and Gaara that bodes well for her. Your evaluation, Iruka, premature as it may be, seems a very solid one. Iruka grinned. Well, let's face it, Hinata and Gaara are about the only people who can stand his antics in the first place, and if that remains true by the time they become genin, we can count endurance among their strengths too. From what I could gather, Kakashi said, Gaara's training in the sand was all long-distance offensive. He was trained to use the Shikaku's control over sand for everything. He is hopelessly reliant on it. Sandaime raised an eyebrow. Did some research of your own, did you, Kakashi? A chuckle. I did. Iruka, I would suggest you train him rigorously in taijutsu. He needs it. He's never been taught anything but ninjutsu, and his body is too frail for a ninja. No doubt the sand figured it a waste of time since the Shikaku defends his body without fail every time he is at risk of injury, but we cannot do that. If he is to be of relief, he will need a backup plan. Not everyone he faces will be stopped by sand. Sandaime nodded. I gathered that much. Myself, the sand was far too confident in the Shikaku's abilities for my tastes. They taught him to rely on it, rather than himself. Sand is not a weapon, nor is a katana or shuriken. They are but tools. The ninja himself is the weapon, and we must forge him as such. Iruka nodded. Fine. Good. Naruto needs some heavy taijutsu training, too. I can pair them up now. See if things work out from that. But you know I'm not exactly a master in hand-to-hand myself. Speak to Guy, Kakashi said, sounding somewhat reluctant. You could find no better specialist than him. He could tell you what to do. But don't let him train them himself. He'll fill their heads with nonsense about the springtime of youth. Iruka laughed. I've heard him talk about that. Okay. Thanks, Kakashi. I'll do that. Good, but you know I must wonder. Kakashi put his hands into his pockets, glancing at Naruto and Gaara. Who will end up their instructor? Focused on the 2 boys, the Jounin didn't notice the slight smile rising on Sandaime's lips. Iruka did, however, and he fought the urge to laugh again. Shaking his head, he marveled once again at his leader's conniving mind. Per Kakashi, I think you're in for some very interesting missions in a few years. Sarutobi-sama. Sandaime glanced up. It was still odd to hear himself addressed in such a manner. He had been hearing Sandaime and Hokage-sama for so long that he'd nearly forgotten his given name, and to hear it used after too many years was extremely strange. But then, Gaara had been strange from the beginning. Ah, yes, Gaara. Hello, my boy. You wanted to see me about something? The red-haired youth nodded as he sat down opposite his leader's desk. Yes. Now you know that Naruto has failed his past 2 graduation exams. He has one more chance to pass before he's held back and ends up with another group of students. Sandaime nodded. Of course, it seems, even with you and Hinata helping him, he just doesn't have enough dedication for academia. You're concerned, I take it. Of course I'm concerned. Hinata and I both passed first time, so we don't need to take the exam again. We've been helping Naruto study instead. I had been certain he would pass last time, but he didn't. If it turns out he fails again, we'll have been genin a year before his next attempt, but, actually, that is not my primary concern at the moment. Oh? The elderly ninja asked. Then enlighten me, Gaara. What is? Gaara sighed. I stayed late after class to help Naruto again yesterday, and as I was going home, I heard some of the other instructors talking amongst themselves. I heard Naruto's name, so I stopped to listen. They evidently thought they were alone. I'm concerned because the way they were talking about him was troubling. 2 of their most memorable remarks were monster and damned fox. They were worried about Naruto becoming a ninja because they thought he would turn on the village and ravage it, just like he did 12 years ago. Now correct me if I am wrong, but Naruto was born 12 years ago. No infant can ravage much of anything. Unless you count his mother's nerves. In any case, this concerns me. I realize the marks on Naruto's face may bear some resemblance to whiskers, but that is hardly enough of a distinction to call him a damned fox. From this, and from the ravaged comment, I've come to a conclusion. A very intriguing conclusion. I've known about the Shikaka for years now. I know what it is, and I know what it has done in the past, and in my studies, I've come to know the Nine rather well, and I remember reading records of the Kyuubi, the nine-tailed fox, attacking the village, ravaging it, perhaps 12 years ago. The vessel used to seal the fox, the living sacrifice required to contain its power, was Naruto. Wasn't it? There was a long silence. Gaara's genius never failed to surprise Sandaime, and he honestly had expected the boy to figure it out. His drawn-out sigh was enough of an answer to satisfy Gaara. Brilliant as ever, Gaara. Please, Sarutobi-sama. It wasn't all that hard. I've had my suspicions for some time now. The year of the attack, the marks on his face that I mentioned, the overwhelming hatred of just about anyone old enough to remember the attack when I heard damned fox, it all but confirmed it. Sandaime sighed again. Yes, well, I'll have to have a word with the instructors you overheard. Give me their names before the end of the day. Beside that, though, yes. Naruto was the child my successor used to seal the Kyuubi. He was the only one born soon enough for the technique to work. Gaara nodded. As I thought. I thank you, Sarutobi-sama, for being honest with me. Naruto is my friend, and I never have appreciated the way the village treats him. I still don't, but at least now I understand it. I've made it a violation of law to speak of the Kyuubi or Naruto's involvement with it. If Naruto had been the one to hear this instead of you, it would have been terrible for him. Still, it doesn't stop them from hating him. He thinks it's because he is an orphan, and somehow I've managed to keep him thinking that over the years. He'll find out eventually, Gaara said with a frown. You know that, don't you? Yes, I know, but I don't want it to be any time soon anyway. Keep this a secret, would you? The law applies to everyone, and that includes you. Gaara nodded as he stood. Fine. Thank you again. Now, I should leave. By this point, Naruto's likely gotten bored with Iruka-sensei and has. Sandaime. Hokage-sama. Sandaime stood up. What? What is it? Two Chunin rushed into the room and bowed hurriedly to Sandaime while catching their breath. One looked up and shouted, Naruto's at it again. The monument, Hokage-sama. He's defaced the Hokage monument with graffiti. Gaara rolled his eyes with a sigh. As I was saying, he's probably gotten bored with Iruka-sensei and has found something else to do. Sandaime lowered his head. What to do with that boy? You too, tell Iruka where he is. Gaara, see if you can't apprehend him before he does permanent damage. Graffiti, what next, Naruto? What next? Raw eggs? Gaara shook his head for the 15th time in 15 minutes as he strolled the streets toward the Hokage monument, a series of busts carved into a huge cliff face of the 4 leaders of Konoha on the southern border of the village, scanning his surroundings for any sign of the orange-clad, blonde-haired prankster. Predictions had been right. Gaara and Naruto had become fast friends since the moment they'd set foot in Konoha together. They'd been inseparable. Wherever one went, the other was almost certain to follow. In the beginning, Gaara had even assisted in Naruto's vandalizing. But now, at 12 years old and mere days from becoming a genin, Gaara had given up on such practices. They were a waste of time and energy, and while he never said so to Naruto's face, he found himself growing tired of Naruto's continuation of them. Keep this up much longer and I'll bury you headfirst in your backyard, Gaara muttered. The idea was far more tantalizing than Gaara would have admitted. He was torn between being impressed that he was so sure-footed on the huge faces on the cliff and being exasperated that he had defaced the 4 Hokages with buckets of paint. Green, blue, purple, yellow, in swirls and symbols and various other drawings, he had even signed his name on Sandaime's forehead, covered the masterfully carved portraits. Iruka groaned. He should have expected this. Have you considered tying him to his chair? Jumping slightly in surprise, Iruka looked down to see Gaara standing beside him. Kami-sama, that kid's quiet, he thought, annoyed. At only 12 years old, Sabaku no Gaara was the most remarkable up-and-coming ninja the village had seen since the infamous Uchiha Itachi, who had graduated from the academy at 7. Gaara was quick, silent, smart, and altogether deadly. A force to be reckoned with even at his young age. Iruka had found himself wondering on several occasions whether he had any place instructing this boy. I think if I did that, Iruka said with a chuckle, he'd just use the chair to cause more damage. He meant it as a joke, but the way Gaara had made his suggestion, in that quiet, contemplative, serious voice of his, it was probable that he thought it a legitimate idea. You're probably right, Gaara replied, making it clear that he hadn't considered Iruka's joke a joke at all, further suggesting that he had been serious from the beginning. Well, let's go get him. Gaara nodded. It hadn't taken much to get Naruto back into the classroom. Once Gaara had threatened to encase his friend in sand and drag him back by his hair, the blonde had stopped struggling immediately, and was silent all the way back to the academy. Once there, though, it was clear Naruto had no intention of cooperating. "Listen to me, Naruto," Iruka snapped. "You've failed the last 2 graduation exams. You only have 1 chance left." "I ain't the only one with 1 chance left," Naruto muttered. "Yes, but at least they came to class. This is no time for you to be goofing off, pulling your little pranks." "Pfft, whatever." Iruka's eyebrow twitched, and he turned a glare on the other students. "All right. Line up. We're doing a review on Henji no Jutsu. Everyone up. Even those who already passed last week." "What?" the entire class demanded in dismay. "Now," Iruka demanded. "This is all your fault, Naruto," Yamanaka Ino snarled. "Tch, this is stupid troublesome Nara Shikamaru, who else?" mumbled. Gaara, who was standing in front of Naruto, scowled. "Are you so unsure of your ability that you balk at an extra test? Was your performance last week a simple fluke? Perhaps you aren't prepared to be a genin." "Oh, who asked you, Gaara?" Ino growled, whirling to face him. Naruto chuckled. Gaara nodded, his face expressionless now. Just because he was exasperated didn't mean he was going to hang his best friend out to dry. He had more honor in him than that. "Okay. No more talking," Iruka snarled. "Now all you have to do is transform yourselves into me, one at a time. Same test as last week, so it shouldn't be difficult for most of you. Haruno Sakura, you're up first." The pink-haired girl nodded and stepped forward, making the seal of the ram as she did. "Okay, here goes Henge." A puff of smoke, and Sakura had become a carbon copy of her instructor. When he'd first learned it, Gaara had been surprised how easy the technique was to perform, how little energy it took, and how effective it was. Even though Sakura was a girl, and years younger than Iruka, she had pulled it off perfectly. Iruka nodded and marked a notepad. "Good. Next? Sabaka no Gaara." Gaara did the same as Sakura did, albeit silently. Most students found it easier to focus their chakra by shouting the name of whatever technique they were attempting, and it had gotten to a point where they thought it was required for the technique to work. Gaara had done the same thing until, one day, he'd forgotten. When he discovered it didn't matter if he spoke the name or not, he stopped. Getting into the habit of shouting every time he performed a technique would make it harder to be silent when he needed to, and silence was one of a ninja's most important weapons. And so, he was silent. Iruka nodded again and made another mark. "Good, Gaara. Next? Uzumaki Naruto." Gaara was about to walk back to his seat until he caught sight of the mischievous look on Naruto's face. Stopping, he turned. "Oh no," he thought, "he's planning something." The older folk of the village had apparently hoped, at the beginning, that Gaara's calm demeanor would rub off on Naruto. They hypothesized that having a friend, especially one such as Gaara, would make him less inclined to cause trouble. They'd been wrong. Gaara knew it was just part of Naruto's personality. He made jokes and pulled pranks more to make himself laugh than the people around him. It wasn't so much to attract attention, as most people figured, as it was to relieve boredom. Naruto was an excitable, energetic person, after all. Calm just didn't become him. Gaara had calmed Naruto down over the 3 years they'd lived together in Konoha, sort of. But not nearly enough to make him stop. He was now calm enough to think through his ideas, which actually made things worse for the townspeople. He had become increasingly inventive and ambitious over the years, and it had escalated into defacing the Hokage monument, and whatever he currently had planned. Glancing to the side, Gaara saw Hyuga Hinata standing beside him. She felt his gaze on her, and looked over. She smiled her small, quaint, shy smile. "Hello, Gaara-kun," she said in a whisper. Gaara nodded his own greeting. They both turned their attention back to Naruto, who was adjusting his goggles. Gaara had long wondered why Naruto wore them. He never used them properly. He just kept them on his forehead. They kept his hair out of his eyes, but any bandana could have done that, taking deep breaths, cracking his knuckles, wasting time, it seemed. Actually, Gaara figured, he was just making sure he had an attentive audience. This one, evidently, he was proud of. He wanted his classmates to see it. "Just do it already," Iruka growled in irritation after a full minute. Okay. Geez," Naruto snapped, and made the seal of the ram. "Let's do this, Henge." There was a puff of smoke, which signified that he'd done it, but Gaara immediately noticed something amiss. The form of the body silhouetted in the smoke was most definitely not Iruka's, and as it cleared, the nude woman Naruto had become winked and blew a kiss at his instructor. Iruka gaped, then blood shot out of his nose and his legs gave out, causing him to fall backward into his desk. Naruto began to howl with laughter and lost control of the transformation. "Ha! Gotcha! I call that one the seduction technique." Gaara swiped a hand over his face. Only Naruto, how long had he spent perfecting that move? Why could he not apply himself so studiously to other tasks? He groaned and shook his head. You idiot! Iruka shouted, shooting back to his feet, his face red in anger and probably embarrassment. Don't waste time inventing such a stupid technique. Gaara wasn't so sure he would call the move stupid, it could have its uses. Although he was certain Naruto hadn't made it up for spying or infiltration, wherein it could be beneficial, he probably invented it simply to shock Iruka. To his credit, he'd succeeded. Hinata, Gaara noted, was blushing furiously. A smirk found its way onto his usually passive face. Of course, Naruto had certainly done his homework. The figure had been spot-on accurate, and as such, for someone like Hinata, born into a high-bred family such as the Hyuga clan, was likely to be far too vulgar and tasteless to be something she'd seen before. It was probably especially embarrassing in conjunction with the boy she liked. Now Gaara knew why Naruto had wanted to borrow his book on human anatomy. Iruka was perched on the top of Shodame's head, watching Naruto with a scowl on his face as the blonde cleaned off the paint with a folded washcloth. Every once in a while he glanced over at Gaara, who was assisting his friend even though Iruka had forbidden it. Sometimes Iruka knew it was impossible to get the red-haired boy to listen to orders and that he was similar to Naruto. You're not leaving until every last drop is cleaned off, Iruka reminded Naruto. Yeah, whatever, Naruto muttered, rubbing at a particularly stubborn patch of green. Ain't like I got anything better to do. Iruka frowned, scratching at the scar cutting across his nose. Naruto. The blonde glared up at his instructor, clearly annoyed. What now? Well, after you're done here, how about we go out and get some ramen? You know, the good stuff, down at Ichiraku. As expected, Naruto's blue eyes lit up. For real? He shouted, a wide grin spreading on his lips. Awesome. Talk about inspiration. Iruka sighed. Sometimes he was too soft. Judging by the way Gaara was looking at him, he knew it, too. Naruto slurped up his ramen like he hadn't eaten in days. Gaara, of course, was far more neat about it, making no sound as he ate his dinner. He seemed thoughtful, as he always did, and Iruka wondered, not for the first time, just what was going through the boy's mind. Why would you do such a thing, Naruto? He asked after a long silence. You do know who the Hokage are, don't you? Sure I do, Naruto said, tilting his bowl and drinking the remaining broth. Setting it down, he belched and wiped his mouth with a sleeve. Basically, people who get to be Hokage are the best ninja in the village. He looked up, thinking. The fourth one, I think, is a hero. He saved the village from a monster fox. Gaara glanced at the blonde when he said this, and something told Iruka that he knew something. Something forbidden. He, like Sandame, wasn't much surprised. Well then, Iruka said, putting that bit of information into the back of his mind for later consideration. Why would you deface the monument, then? Don't you know how disrespectful that is? I'll tell you why, Naruto said. I did it 'cause someday, I'm gonna be Hokage, and I'm gonna be better than any of the guys up on that cliff. Then, everyone's gonna look up to me. They're all gonna see me and say, he's the greatest ninja ever. Everyone's gonna acknowledge me. Iruka slurped up a noodle that had been hanging out of his mouth. He never got over how impassioned Naruto sounded whenever he talked about his ambition to be Hokage. It made Iruka think that, maybe he actually could. It was a long shot, but it was possible maybe. By the way, Sensei, Naruto said, and the smile on his face made Iruka apprehensive. It was friendly, and that usually meant he was up to something. I've got a favor to ask. What? Iruka asked, raising an eyebrow. You want another bowl? No, Naruto said, and even Gaara seemed surprised at this. Could I put on your hitate? Please? Just for a minute. This? Iruka said, tapping the metal strip on his headband. No, this signifies that you're an official ninja, that you're an adult. It's an important symbol. You'll have a chance to get one of your own tomorrow. Naruto pouted. Mean it? Iruka chuckled. Is that why you took your goggles off? I want seconds. Hey. Iruka scowled. You little. Gaara smirked. I thought so. Some things never changed, Iruka thought, annoyed, as he called for another bowl. Especially when it came to Naruto. And that made him worry. Would Naruto be able to graduate? He wasn't sure. As Gaara's smirk faded, Iruka figured he was thinking the same thing. TCH tomorrow, huh? Naruto muttered as he waited for his ramen. Fine. I'll show you guys. I'll get my own headband, I'll graduate. Just you watch. Yeah, he'll graduate, he's too determined not to. He'll pull through it somehow. But in the back of his mind he still wondered. And he still worried. He brought up an arm and blocked his opponent's strike, pushing forward and thrusting out his other arm for a blow of his own. His opponent jumped back and twirled in a kick aimed at his head. He ducked, dove forward, and threw his knee up. His opponent leapt aside, whirling around again and sweeping one leg into his, knocking him to the ground. As Gaara spat grit from his mouth, he was reminded that sometimes, always having sand break your fall was a bad thing. Hinata held out a hand. Gaara clasped her wrist and pulled himself up, wiping off his pants and shirt. Gaara-kun, why do you always wear black? You're sweating. I'm sweating? What of you, Hinata, wearing that jacket of yours? I'm sure that is hotter than what I'm wearing. Hinata frowned. It's a light color. It's a lot cooler than it looks. I think you're just trying to look cool, walking around with long-sleeved black shirts and black pants all the time. Gaara smirked. A ninja's greatest ally is shadow, Hinata. Black complements that. Not during the daytime. Fine. I like black. So you are just trying to look cool. I wouldn't waste my time worrying about that, and you know it. Anyway, it's getting about time for Naruto's exam. Where is he? Hinata looked over in the direction of the academy. I think Naruto-kun is still in the classroom. Maybe he's studying? I'm doubting that, but then, you never know. Sometimes the inclination does hit him. I wonder how he'll hold up this time. He'll pass this time, Hinata said, but there wasn't as much confidence in her voice as she likely would have preferred. Gaara crossed his arms. Yes. He'll pass. He's been training with us quite often since last time. He'll have no trouble. He didn't sound all that confident, either, and that bothered him. What if Naruto didn't pass? Gaara didn't want to contemplate that, but he couldn't lie to himself it was possible. Most would say probable. Especially if they require him to clone himself, I think he may have a bit of trouble, but he should be fine. They both knew cloning was Naruto's weakest technique. He was terrible at it. He'd slowly honed his transforming abilities over the years, he knew a myriad of simple techniques, and he had excellent stamina and physical ability, but Bunshin no Jutsu was something he just couldn't grasp. That was a problem because it was a very common technique tested in final examinations. It hadn't been used during the last exam, but there was a chance, a very good one, that it would be used this time. Do you think they'll use that technique? Hinata asked. They didn't last time, maybe they'll pick something else. Perhaps, but I wonder. Naruto-kun can do it. Gaara smiled slightly. Of course, he was just being paranoid. You're right, Hinata. He can do this, and he will. But in the back of his mind he wondered. I can do this, I will. Bunshin no Jutsu? TCH making a clone of yourself? Easy. He could do this, no big deal at all. This final exam was a piece of cake. He tried to make himself believe that, but as he walked into the room where Iruka and Mizuki, another of the academy's instructors, sat behind a desk awaiting his arrival, Naruto's legs shook. If it had only been some other move to show his ability to mold chakra like Henjin no Jutsu, maybe he could have passed this final portion no problem. He'd had no trouble passing the tests on his ability to use shuriken and kunai efficiently, and his taijutsu skills were certainly impressive, they said, but why did the last move have to be cloning, for the love of ramen? Naruto sighed heavily. He had to do this, he couldn't let them down again, he couldn't go back to Hinata and Gaara with failure on his shoulders, not this time. Whenever you're ready, Iruka said, waving a hand. Naruto took a deep breath and let it out slowly. He had to be calm, that, both Hinata and Gaara had told him, was the key. If he wasn't calm, nothing else mattered, he would fail. He had to be calm, had to be calm. He slowly made the sign of the ram, wondering why so many techniques used that sign, then berated himself for thinking such a stupid thing in the middle of a test. He had to focus. This was it, everything his friends had taught him came down to this. Everything hinged on this. If he couldn't do it, he'd have to go back to school while they went on to become real ninja. He couldn't do that. Failure was not an option. Bunshin no Jutsu, he cried, eyes tightly shut. He waited for almost 10 seconds before daring to open his eyes to look and see if he'd done it. He opened them slowly. His heart sank. They were their two clones, but... Iruka sighed. They're useless. Completely useless. I'm sorry, Naruto, but this is unacceptable, I cannot pass you. The entire world seemed to crash down on him. Looking down at the pair of things slumped on the floor, he wanted nothing more than to collapse, to become a clone of them, to just fall and let the world go on without him. Iruka, that judgment is a bit harsh, don't you think? Mizuki said, and Naruto's head snapped up, hope flaring in his eyes. I mean, look at the reports. He's shown excellent stamina and physical ability. All 3 times he's taken this test, he's done well enough in those categories to pass. And he did clone himself, sure, they aren't up to snuff, but I'm not exactly great at them, either. I think we could pass him. Mizuki, look at them. Everyone else managed at least 3 clones, Gaara managed 7, Naruto only made 2, and look at them. They're crippled. Hopelessly crippled. A strangled sob made its way through Naruto's lips. Closing his eyes again, he fell to his knees on the floor. No, he let them both down again. I'm sorry, Naruto. But I cannot, in good conscience, let you into our ranks with a performance like this. He didn't respond. Somehow managing to rise to his feet, he shuffled out of the room, hoping that something heavy would fall on his head and kill him. Before he had to tell Hinata and Gaara that he was useless. At the gathering outside the academy, the first thing Gaara didn't see was Naruto. He scanned the group of students as he accepted his official Hokage headband, but Naruto wasn't there. He lowered his eyes to the leaf etched into the metal band, gripping it so tightly that the edges bit into his skin through the cloth, and let out a shuddering breath. Damn it! Gaara-kun? Looking up, he saw Hinata's light gray eyes on him, saw the headband tied around her neck, and somehow couldn't find any solace in it. Sure, he had Hinata, and that was definitely a good thing, but somehow without Naruto there as well it was hollow. He's not here, he said simply, in a dead voice. Hinata's eyes lowered, but they rose again almost immediately. Do you think maybe he's just late? There was so much hope in her voice, and he hated to dash it. Gaara shook his head. You know as well as I that he wouldn't be late for this, not for this. He's not here. He didn't graduate. The young Hyuga heiress frowned, looked down again, and nodded. He was right, of course. There was no way Naruto would be late in accepting his headband. It was a symbol of adulthood, a badge of honor. If anything, he would have been early. A sudden shadow caused them both to look up. I hope you aren't angry with me, Iruka said. Gaara shook his head numbly. No, if it was your judgment that he wasn't ready, then I respect that. It isn't your fault, Iruka-sensei. Iruka looked up at the sky and sighed. I can't help but think it is. Hey, isn't he the kid who? Yeah, that's him. The only one who failed. Iruka looked up, eyes narrow. Great, here would come the insults, the jibes, the condescension again. It never changed. Never any sympathy, never any courtesy, just disdain. Gaara's eyes went slowly toward the pair, and he did not look pleased. Iruka might have told the red-haired genin to hold off, to not let it bother him, but he really didn't care to. He crossed his arms and said nothing. Serves him right. Gaara flinched, anger flaring in his light green eyes. His jaw clenched. Can you imagine if they let someone like him become a shinobi? He clenched his fists and began moving toward the two girls. I mean, think about what he is. Gaara swept his arm to the side, and sand erupted from his gourd, slamming the pair, not gently, into a tree. All chit-chat stopped, and all eyes turned to him. He didn't bother looking at any of them. He simply moved forward. Naruto was sitting on a small swing, having arrived there minutes earlier, and was pushing himself with his toes. That was Gaara's destination. Even when the gathered villagers began whispering about him, he didn't look back. Hinata glanced at Iruka, at the two girls who now lay slumped, unconscious, on the grass, and followed Gaara without a word. Hey! You're an instructor! Somebody snapped at Iruka, causing him to glance to the side. The man was lanky, dark-haired, with a face that bespoke no sense of decency. You can't just let that punk attack anyone he feels like. I don't. I let him attack anyone who deserves it. Turning without another word, Iruka walked away. This day was turning out to be horrible. Naruto looked up as they approached, but he couldn't find the strength to smile. He felt drained. Naruto-kun, Hinata said softly, sadly. Gaara was silent, but there was sadness in his eyes. Naruto was somewhat surprised, though, that there wasn't disappointment there, too. Hey, he said, gesturing lamely at the two of them. Look at that, you guys got headbands, it's official now. You guys are ninja, real ninja. I'm happy for you. And he was, of course he was. But he knew he didn't sound like it. He lowered his head again, taking a deep, shuddering breath, and began to push himself with his toes again. That means you're adults now, you can make all kinds of important decisions now, all that good stuff. Naruto, Gaara whispered. Naruto-kun, will you be okay? He shrugged. Sure, I'll be fine. No big deal. I mean, there's always next time, right? I can make it. No sweat. He choked back a sob. No sweat. He stood up without looking at them. I gotta get home. I'll see you guys later. Congratulations. Really. And that was it. Gaara lowered his head. Damn. I've never seen him so sad. Hinata was twisting the hem of her jacket in both fists, struggling to hold back tears. Gaara looked up, saw Iruka standing next to Sandaime in front of the academy. Frowning, he began walking toward them. I'll be back. Hinata didn't follow him, but continued to watch Naruto's back as he shuffled toward his home. The group of students and their parents were quick to get out of Gaara's way, but he didn't really notice. Stopping before his instructor and his leader, he crossed his arms. Iruka-sensei, Saratobi-sama, I have a request, if possible. Both raised an eyebrow in curiosity. Give him until the end of the day. He's been getting better at it. If I could just have a few more hours with him, I'm sure he could do it. He wasn't sure at all, but it was the last chance he had. The new genin would be receiving their first assignments in 3 days' time. After that, there would be no going back. Sandaime sighed. I am not sure, Gaara, Iruka said. He did better this time than last time, sure, but... Precisely. Think of it, Iruka-sensei. He knows now that he has to do it in order to become a ninja. With that knowledge, he's bound to apply himself. He should have known that we may have asked him to perform that particular technique before, Iruka said. It's always been a good way to determine a ninja's ability to mold chakra properly. We've used it often. Gaara sighed. He doesn't think that way. He was perfecting his other techniques on the off chance that you wouldn't use it. It wasn't used last time, so he figured it wouldn't be used this time. Whether or not this was an intelligent decision on his part really isn't the issue. The point is, he has improved. Just look at the spectacle he caused yesterday. You may not have liked his transformation, but you can't deny that it was impressive. Iruka frowned. I don't know, Gaara. This is unprecedented. Just let me work with him. You can decide tomorrow. Just give him this chance, please. Sandaime crossed his arms. I think that's reasonable. Simply reevaluate his execution of the technique tomorrow, and if he fails again, fine. But if he passes, he can join his fellows. He was the only failing student this time around. I believe we can afford giving him this chance. Iruka looked at Sandaime, and his frown deepened. Well, I suppose, he sighed. Glancing back at Gaara, he waved a hand. Fine. I really don't have an argument against it anyway. Good luck. Gaara smiled widely, an exceedingly rare occurrence. Thank you, Iruka-sensei. Thank you, Saratobi-sama. He turned and went off to find Naruto. If they were to be successful, they had no time to waste. Hey, Naruto! He turned. Huh? Who? Mizuki stood there, leaning against a fence. You looked really upset earlier today. I just wanted to check on you, see how you were doing. Naruto lowered his gaze. I'm fine. Mizuki sighed. I think you should come with me. Come on, I want to talk to you about something. He didn't want to, but he shrugged and followed Mizuki anyway. It wasn't like he had anything else to do. Everyone else was busy, and he didn't want to face his friends right now. They hadn't been angry with him, but he knew they had to be disappointed. There was no way they couldn't be. I've known Iruka for a long time, now he's not a bad guy. You know that, don't you? He's been your teacher for years. You know he's not out to get you. Naruto scoffed. Yeah, right, if he isn't, then how come he didn't pass me? Why was I the only one who didn't pass? He could have. Mizuki smiled slightly. Come on, don't be that way. He might have seemed harsh, but he's just trying to help you. He's just worried about you, you know. Whatever. Mizuki sighed. Look, he's just using his judgment. He doesn't think you would be able, at your current level, to survive as a ninja. He doesn't want you to end up dead. I've seen genin die on their first mission because the instructors who passed them were too lenient. Iruka doesn't want that to happen. Naruto blinked back tears. But I'm better, I've gotten better, and I really wanted to graduate. I could learn how to survive after graduating. I'd learn better how to be a ninja if I was a ninja. Another sigh from Mizuki. Well, then I guess I'll have to. Huh? Look, Naruto, I know a secret, a really important secret. One that will help you. What? Naruto exclaimed, standing up in a rush. What is it? Will it let me graduate? Mizuki chuckled. Yes, it will if that is you're up to it. I'll do it. I'll do anything. A conspiratorial smirk rose on the silver-haired instructor's face. Good. That's good. See, there's this scroll, Sandaime-sama has it. And it can help you graduate. Iruka was almost asleep, thinking forlornly about the day, when the heavy knock came at his door. Iruka-sensei. He sat up, looking over at the source of the voice, wondering with slight annoyance what could be so important. On the other hand, though, he was also grateful to have some sort of distraction, something to help him forget. Opening the door, Iruka saw Mizuki standing on his porch, breathing harshly with wide, frightened eyes. Mizuki? What is it? What's happened? Come quick! Mizuki gasped, hands on his knees. Hurry! It's the scroll. The sealed scroll. It's been taken. What? Hokage-sama's scroll? The forbidden scroll? Yes. Yes, hurry! It was Naruto. He took it earlier today. Iruka's eyes widened. Naruto? You're serious? Positive. Come on. Sandaime-sama has summoned us. Okay. I'll be there. Mizuki half dragged him to the front of Sandame's home, panting with the exertion as he hurriedly explained the situation. Somehow, Naruto had found out about the forbidden scroll held in the Hokage's office, a huge document containing jutsu that had long since been considered too dangerous. Shodame had, because of this, sealed the scroll away. How Naruto had managed to get his hands on it, Mizuki didn't know. Iruka had an idea, but one he didn't voice, the Kyuubi. He couldn't be sure, and he certainly wasn't going to mention it, but the idea remained in the back of his mind. By the time they reached Sandame, nearly every Chunin and Jounin in the village had been assembled. Iruka frowned, daunted by this. Sandame must have decided this to be an extremely serious offense if he had summoned so many. Which meant Naruto, he thought sadly. It couldn't end well. The faces of his colleagues were contorted with anger, and it was clear that a slap on the wrist wouldn't do this time. We can't let this slide by as a prank. It's too dangerous. If that scroll is brought outside the village, what happens if that brat tries to use it? If he unlocks the secrets of... Enough, Sandame commanded, and the expression on his face showed that he would hear no more. You need not inform me of the seriousness of this situation. I'm not senile. The faces of the speakers grew chagrined. The scroll was taken earlier in the day. You are all ordered to find Naruto and bring him to me. He may have committed a crime by taking the scroll, but he is still a citizen of this village, and regardless of what any of you think, I will not condone violence in this. He is to be brought back by any means absolutely necessary, and nothing more. I will deal with him personally. Have I made myself perfectly clear? A series of nods. Good. Now go. Sandame made a cutting gesture with his arm. Iruka, he said before the black-haired Chunin had a chance to leave. Iruka turned. Yes? Find Gaara and Hinata. Take them with you. I don't know what Naruto plans to do with the scroll, but I think the only chance of his returning peacefully lies with them. Iruka nodded. Understood, Hokage-sama. Damn it! I can't believe he would do something this reckless. Iruka and Hinata had a hard time keeping up with Gaara as they searched for Naruto. When he had heard about what his friend had done, Gaara's face had gone as pale as a ghost, and he had set off immediately at a breakneck pace. Gaara-kun! Hinata called, panting harshly. I can't find him if we're going so fast. Slow down. Gaara stopped, perched on a tree branch, and turned. Slowly, haltingly, he drew in several deep breaths as he strained to calm himself. Savage fear gleamed in his green eyes, and it was all too evident that he didn't want to slow down in the slightest. Then he seemed to remember something. Hinata. Your Byakugan. Hinata nodded as she regained her breath. I can't maintain it if we're going that fast, please, Gaara-kun, let's slow down a bit. Fine. He waited impatiently for Hinata to activate her bloodline limit, hoping that she had enough practice with it to find him. He had faith in her, but he couldn't ignore the fact that she had just recently, mere months before, learned to harness the power of the Byakugan. It was part of the reason she couldn't use it while running. She had to focus a lot harder than would be considered normal. Niji, Hinata's cousin, was only a year older than she, and his ability was already strong enough to rival the elders of the Hyuga clan. Granted, Niji was considered a prodigy, but still Hinata was far behind in her development. It didn't help matters any that she had been startled awake in the middle of the night either. His doubts were misplaced. I found him, she cried triumphantly. He's close, just this way. They shot off through the trees in the direction she'd pointed. I think I've got it, Naruto gasped, grinning with pride. When he looked at the scroll and had seen that the first, and easiest, technique listed was Kage Bunshin, he had originally thought it would be a pain, but somehow, after only a few hours of training, he'd managed to create a clone, not one that looked drunk off his ass, but a real, honest-to-goodness recreation of himself. Then he'd gone on to try creating more. As Iruka had said, Gaara had made 7 clones of himself during his exam, and Naruto was determined to at least match if not surpass that number. Mizuki had said he would need to prove he had mastered at least one technique from the scroll in order for Iruka to let him graduate, and that meant 1 clone wasn't enough. Thus far, he had managed 5. They hadn't lasted long, but there were 5. 5. He felt giddy with excitement. It wouldn't be long before he would be able to prove to his teacher and his friends that he wasn't a dropout, he wasn't a failure, he'd become a ninja. I will, he whispered with fierce intensity. And nothing's gonna stop me, not this time. Hey! Naruto! Turning around in surprise, Naruto saw his teacher, highly aggravated judging by the look on his face, and the tone of his voice, glaring down at him. Hey! Naruto said with a laugh. There you are. There I am? Iruka demanded. What the hell have you been doing? Do you have any idea what kind of a mess you've caused? The entire village is in an uproar. Eh? Naruto asked, raising an eyebrow. What for? What for? Iruka snarled, then pointed at the scroll. For that, you imbecile. Huh? This? Why? I wasn't gonna keep it or nothing. Naruto, do you have any clue what that is? Sure. It's a scroll filled with advanced jutsu. And if I prove I can master one of them, I can graduate. Iruka's face went blank as he paced behind his student, staring at him as if he were daft. Who told you that? Naruto whirled around to face him. Mizuki-sensei. He said I could borrow this scroll from old man Hokage and graduate. He told me to grab the scroll and come here to practice. Mizuki? Yeah. There was a long silence. As Naruto was waiting impatiently for Iruka to reply, he sensed something. It was a feeling he'd felt before. He was being watched. It was like when he was training with Gaara and Hinata, one of them would sneak up on the other two, trying to remain as silent as possible. It had become a sort of game, a competition between them. Thus far, of course, Gaara had the lead. This was like that, but somehow different. Then, suddenly, he heard something, like a high-pitched whistle cutting through the air. Iruka gasped, but before he managed to do anything, Naruto had flipped a kunai from the pouch on his belt into his hand. He whirled around and, just as he'd expected, saw a volley of shuriken, small and almost undetectable in the night, flying toward him. Who knew that weird taijutsu training with the psycho with gigantic eyebrows would have actually come in handy? The projectiles seemed to be almost too slowly. He erupted into movement. There was the clash of metal against metal, and a shower of sparks, but none of them hit him. Naruto grinned, taking a moment to feel proud of himself, before Iruka shouted. Who's out there? A dark, boisterous, familiar laugh echoed through the trees. Well, looks like you're a little better than I thought, Naruto. Good job. Mizuki, crouched above them on a thick branch, chuckled as he stood up. I underestimated you, it seems. Well, no matter. Mizuki! Iruka shouted, stepping up in front of Naruto. What's your problem? Why did you lie to him? HM? Why, Iruka, I have no idea what you're talking about. The hell you don't. Iruka whirled around. Naruto, that scroll is forbidden. Shodame-sama sealed it away and decreed it illegal. Huh? Illegal, but Mizuki-sensei, you said. He's the liar, Naruto. Don't trust him. He just used you as a scapegoat to get the scroll for himself. Guard it with your life. Mizuki chuckled. Naruto, even if you've read what's in there, it won't mean anything. I can show you what it means. Iruka clenched his fists. Shut up, you idiot. Say, Naruto, I just thought of something. The look on Mizuki's face was one of the cruelest amusement. The smirk on his face made Naruto's skin crawl. Shut up. You do know what really happened 12 years ago after the demon fox attacked the village, don't you? Naruto was thoroughly confused. What do you? Since then, Mizuki continued, in a voice that sent shivers down Naruto's spine, the people have been bound by a very, very strict law. Huh? I don't remember any law. What? You wouldn't. You see, the thing about this funny little law is that everyone knows about it except you. Naruto gasped. Huh? Me? What kind of law is that? The kind of law that states no one may tell you that you are the nine-tailed demon fox. You are the QB. Ice-cold shock ran through his body as he stiffened, completely paralyzed. How could that? What did he? It made no sense. He wasn't. What? You were the one who attacked our village 12 years ago. You were the one who killed our people. You killed Iruka's parents and left him an orphan. He hates you. They all hate you. And know that can't it. Don't you find it odd that everyone despises you so much? Why, you've always been an outcast. It's because you're a monster. Yondaime captured you and caused you to be reborn in that body. It killed him. You killed our people. You killed our hero. You're a monster. A savage mon. Be silent. Mizuki stiffened, caught off guard, and both he and Naruto turned. Gaara stood in the clearing, arms crossed over his black shirt. His green eyes blazed with anger. His hitate was tied around his upper right arm, gleaming in the moonlight. Brow furrowed, he glared at Mizuki with such white-hot intensity, such black hatred, that it by all means should have killed him. You pompous, arrogant, empty-headed fool. Gaara spat, his voice like the crack of a whip. You're just like the rest of those idiots, spouting that nonsensical, derogatory trash as if it were as indisputable as gravity. Naruto is no more responsible for the death of the fourth or any of the others than you are. Naruto stared in open-mouthed shock and awe. He'd never seen his best friend in the grip of such rage. Gaara was always cool, calm, and collected. He never lost control of his emotions. But now he looked almost rabid. His eyes gleamed feverishly, teeth bared as though he were a wild animal. Mizuki huffed dismissively. So coming to his defense, why am I not surprised? And what would you know of anything, outsider? You're the same as him. Nothing but a monster. Gaara was silent for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was dangerously low. I am the same as he, and that is how I know you are a fool. If a person contracts a disease, he does not become that disease. If an animal is locked in a cage, the cage does not become that animal. Naruto and I, we are carriers of the diseases you fear. We contain them. We are cages for the predators you hate. We confine them. Naruto's eyes widened to saucers. Gaara, what are you? The monster you claim to despise so much. Mizuki is within Naruto, is locked within him. They are not the same being. But then I don't expect you to understand that, you being the prejudicial ignoramus that you are. Let me simply state that if you harm him, you will see just what the raccoon demon locked within me is capable of. And you won't like it. Mizuki stared incredulously at Gaara for a moment, then threw his head back and laughed. Oh ho! Just a green, wet behind there's Genin, and you already think you can take me down. Do you have any clue what you're up against? I'd ask you that same question, Mizuki. Gaara walked slowly, purposefully, to stand beside Naruto. You hate Naruto for a reason that is tantamount to hating the sky for a sunburn. You hate him because your village was attacked by a creature none but your leader could defeat. But you see, that's just it. You care about your home, in your own twisted way. You found acceptance in your home, the place you were born, and so you wish to protect it. But how do you think it feels to find nothing in your home? Nothing but cold glares and heated disdain. I have a family back in the place where I was born, a father, a brother, a sister, and an uncle bound to me by blood. Yet another chain locked upon me by forces beyond my control. And they say, for my uncle treated me the same way you now treat Naruto, like a beast. Like a monster. Like a creature unworthy of any degree of decency. But here I have found acceptance. I've found a life worth living. Here in Konoha, the Hidden Leaf, I have a true family, one of my own choosing. Here is my brother, Uzumaki Naruto. And I will not let you kill him. Mizuki sneered, eyes narrow and dancing with cruelty. You honestly think I care what you say? You think I care one bit about that long-winded little monologue of yours? You think you can garner my sympathy with some crackpot sob story like that? Gaara chuckled, waving a hand dismissively. No, not really. I just thought I'd garner some time for my sister to get into position. Mizuki's eyes widened. What? He was suddenly propelled from his perch and fell flat on his face on the grass. Naruto snapped his head up and saw Hinata standing there now, arms still locked rigid from the strike she'd landed on Mizuki's neck. Her light gray eyes were bright and narrow, like the blade of a sword. Never call them monsters again. Naruto-kun and Gaara-kun aren't monsters, she whispered fiercely. Gaara laughed. Brilliant, Hinata! She nodded. Now Gaara glanced at Naruto as his laughter faded. Let's finish this. He threw up his arm, and a wave of sand surrounded Mizuki's legs just as he managed to rise to his feet. Locked tight, the sand hardened at Gaara's unspoken command and stopped any retreat. Naruto smirked. Okay, fine. I'll show you my new move. Iruka-sensei. You watch this too. He took a deep, steadying breath and formed the seal he just learned, a seal he'd never seen except on the scroll, the Forbidden Scroll. Eyes blazing, he shouted, Tajua Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Iruka stared in slack-mouthed shock as Naruto formed a cross with the index and middle fingers of each hand. It was a seal he only knew vaguely, but he knew it was a powerful one. Tajua Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Mass shadow clone? How in the... He didn't even have time to finish the thought before the entire clearing and several trees surrounding it were flooded with Narutos. There were well over 100 of them, and every one was spot-on perfect. Iruka couldn't even tell which Naruto was the real one anymore. Come on! They all shouted at Mizuki. If you think you can come and get us! Mizuki shook as he took in the sight, and the realization that he was defeated dawned on his face. No? The clones all said as one. Well, then we'll go first. And like a single entity, they all moved at once. It was less than a minute before Mizuki was beaten into unconsciousness. Naruto, now once again the only Naruto in sight, stood beside his broken, bleeding body with a chagrined smile on his face. Guess I kinda overdid it a little. Hinata, Gaara, and Iruka all stared at him. So many clones and he can still stand? Iruka thought, thunderstruck. Is this the power of a Jinchuriki? Kami-sama, he's... That was amazing, Naruto-kun. Hinata finally managed to say. Her face was a picture of awe and pride. A wide, blissful smile was on her face. Gaara crossed his arms again as the sand around Mizuki flowed back into his gourd. He smirked. Most impressive, Naruto. It seems cloning is no longer beyond you. Yep. I did it. I did it? The realization seemed just then to hit him, and he chuckled in disbelief. You did it, Gaara said. And not just after images, either flesh and blood clones. This Kage Bunshin technique is quite useful. Looking down at Mizuki, Naruto seemed not to hear him. He frowned thoughtfully, then looked back up. Gaara, what did you mean about a demon? I don't get it. What Mizuki-san, what he said about the fox the Kyuubi was that? Gaara nodded. Yes. Well, no. What I said was true. The nine-tailed fox, the Kyuubi, is within your body. It was sealed there by Yandame-sama. It's the only way to contain a bijou. Bijou? The collective name of the 9 legendary creatures that have been hypothesized to be the source of all the world's chakra. I don't know if that's true, but all of them have immense power. Power that can only be contained within a newborn child through the use of a highly advanced and complicated sealing technique. Each bijou has a certain number of tails, from 1 to 9, and from that their power can be gauged. The one-tailed raccoon, called Shikaku, is the weakest, while the 9-tailed fox is the strongest. Shikaku, Hinata whispered. Isn't that what the sand called you? Gaara nodded. Yes, Hinata, Naruto. The one-tailed Shikaku lies within me. So that's what you meant when you said you were the same as me, Naruto whispered. Yes. My father performed the sealing, which cost my mother her life. It is why I was hated. Why they all called me monster. We, Naruto, are called Jinchuriki. Naruto's head lowered again. So that's why. Iruka finally spoke up. It's why Hokage-sama took you and your classmates to the hidden sand. He wanted you to meet someone in your same position, with your same ability. Old man Hokage? Yes. It's why he took you in as one of us, Gaara. Hokage-sama does not believe Jinchuriki should be treated in such a disgusting manner. You are no less human for containing a bijou. That's why he wanted to bring you here. So that you could, like you said, find acceptance. Gaara smiled slightly. My father used to call Sarutobi-sama an overly sentimental fool, but it seems that is a blessing. Naruto looked over at Iruka. Iruka-sensei, you knew I had the Kyuubi inside me? You knew about the sealing? Iruka nodded. Yes. From your birth I knew. And you still. Mizuki is a fool. You are not responsible for what the Kyuubi did. My parents were killed in that attack, that much he got right, but to blame you for that is not only wrong, it's hopelessly stupid. Iruka-sensei is right, Hinata said. You're Naruto-kun. Not a monster. A small, trembling smile rose on Naruto's lips. Thanks, you guys. I think I understand. It isn't because I'm an orphan old man Hokage made that up, it's because they think I'm the Kyuubi like Mizuki. That's why everyone. Do you remember, Naruto, something you once told me? Gaara said. You told me not to bother with people like that. That they were the monsters, not me. Yeah, I did say that, huh? I know this must be hard to absorb just now, Iruka said. You're probably still trying to figure it out. For now, I think we should just let it be. Perhaps you should talk to Hokage-sama about it. Maybe. More importantly, Naruto, there's something I need to do. Huh? Naruto regarded Iruka with a confused expression. What? Close your eyes, Naruto, just for a moment, if you would. He looked incredulous, but Naruto complied. Iruka chuckled as he untied his hatayite. Removing Naruto's goggles, he retied the headband around Naruto's forehead. Okay. Naruto opened his eyes, saw Iruka's bare forehead and the goggles in his hand, and reached up. He felt the cloth, and the metal band, and gawked. Iruka-sensei. You wanted to try it on yesterday, but you weren't an adult then. You weren't a ninja. Now you are. Congratulations, Naruto. Naruto's eyes might have fallen out of his head. But he stammered, I thought Mizuki was he said you said. Iruka chuckled again. You've shown me that you have learned all I have to teach. In these few hours you have grown. All 3 of you have. You were magnificent tonight. Feel proud of yourselves. You are now, all 3 of you, shinobi of Konohagakure. A wide grin overtook him. And now, to celebrate, what say we head over to Ichiraka for some ramen, huh? They're closed, but I think this is a special occasion. A very special occasion. He was met with total silence. Glancing at his 3 former students, Iruka raised an eyebrow. Eh? Tears leaked down Naruto's face. His lips trembled. Iruka-sensei. Iruka was tackled in a crushing hug that sent the both of them backward into a tree. Naruto burst into tears as he clung to him, thanking him profusely again and again. Smiling, Iruka returned the embrace. Glancing up, he saw Gaara and Hinata both had smiles that reached their ears. There was absolutely no doubt in Iruka's mind now. Any skepticism, any nervousness, had been dashed completely. Sabaka no Gaara, Hyuga, Hinata, Uzumaki, Naruto, you 3 will be legends someday, I can feel it. He'd never been prouder in his life. What if Naruto meets Gaara at a young age? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoyed this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.